Good evening, everyone, council members, directors, members of the press, and the rest of our administration, and all those who are listening in via our Zoom. Calling the meeting to order, and I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this land is the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, comprised of the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples, and of the Huron-Wyandot peoples. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island who have been living and working on this land from time immemorial. I'm also going to go back and I'm going to be reading a statement here on behalf of the town of Essex. And I'd like to take a minute to address the recent events that have unfolded at the Optimist Club of Essex Youth Dance that was held on Friday, May the 13th. I was shocked and appalled to hear about the destructive behavior demonstrated by a select group of children, kids, causing physical and mental harm to others, including staff. This type of behavior is unacceptable. It is not only harmful and dangerous, but it also places an unnecessary burden on our hard-working police force. I've personally spoken with Staff Sergeant Wilson on the weekend, and the town is working closely with the OPP to investigate the incident and will provide full cooperation into this investigation. Details of the incident cannot be discussed publicly at this time, as this case is still active under investigation. In light of this occurrence, Council would like to remind all citizens that the town of Essex has zero tolerance for violence and vandalism. Everyone should feel safe, protected, and accepted in our community. If you witness any form of destructive behavior, please report it to the OPP. And this can be done by either calling 911 or calling the non-emergency line at 1-888-310-1122. And I'll repeat that number. Non-emergency line number is 1-888-310-1122. Thank you. With that said, if we could all please stand for the national anthem. 1-888-310-1122. And I'll repeat that number. Non-emergency line number is 1-888-310. This evening, we did have a closed meeting starting at 4:45 this afternoon, and I will go to our clerk, Mr. Robert Auger, to report on the closed meeting status.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yes, this is to report that council did move into closed session earlier this evening to discuss the security of the property of the municipality, potential litigation affecting the municipality, and proposed dispositions of land by the municipality. All is permitted to do so by sections 239(2)(a), E, and C of the Municipal Act. Coming out of that closed meeting, I can advise as follows. Firstly, council gave direction to declare in open session the property known as 127 Nottingham as being surplus to the needs of the municipality, and further that administration be directed to provide the requisite public notice and then bring back to council a bylaw authorizing the sale of the subject property by way of public tender, all in accordance with Bylaw 855, being a bylaw to establish policies and procedures for the sale and disposition of surplus land. And on that, Mr. Mayor, we would be looking for the appropriate resolution from council to confirm that. Thirdly, council also gave direction to declare that portion of the property known as 0 Bell Avenue, being a portion of approximately 200 feet by 25 feet located in the northwest extent of that property at 0 Bell, as being surplus as well to the needs of the municipality, and further that administration be directed to provide the requisite public notice and then bring back to council an authorizing bylaw from the sale of the subject property by way of private sale in accordance with, again, Bylaw 855, being a bylaw to establish policies and procedures for the sale and disposition of surplus land. And again, would require a council resolution to confirm that declaration and direction. Then council was provided with a verbal update on 2 town developments, namely the Essex Town Center development and the Townsview development. And then finally, council was provided an update on a potential bylaw enforcement matter. And that's the extent of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Auger, did you want to bring forward those resolutions?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the first resolution would relate to 127 Nottingham, that council declare that property as surplus, and further that administration be directed to provide the requisite public notice and then bring back to council an authorizing bylaw to sell the property by way of public tender, all in accordance with Bylaw 855.
The resolution is moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions on the resolution? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Mr. Auger, the second resolution.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, the second resolution, that council declare that portion of the property known as 0 Bell Avenue, being a 200 by 25 feet portion located in the northwest extent of the property, as being surplus to the needs of the municipality, and further that administration be directed to provide the requisite public notice and then bring back to council an authorizing bylaw from the sale of the subject property by way of private sale, again in accordance with Bylaw 855.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Guerin. All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Auger because we have an addition to the agenda before we pass it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. 2 proposed additions to the regular council agenda. Councillor Bondi has a notice of motion for presentment only, looking to propose to add that as 17.2.3. And Councillor Verbeek also has a notice of motion for presentment only this evening, looking to add that as 17.2.4 to this evening's agenda.
Okay, looking for a mover on the agenda for this evening. Oh, yes. Lots for conflicts of interest. Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
Mayor, I've got a conflict on 19.1.2, the short-term rental bylaw, so I will not be joining in that.
Thank you. Any further declarations? Conflict? Okay, then now we will move on to the adoption of the published agenda. Looking for a mover on this evening's agenda, moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Any questions on this evening's agenda? I see none. All in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Looking for adoption of the minutes of our meeting from May the 2nd. Moved by Councillor Vanderwellen and supported by Councillor Bondi. Any questions on those minutes? All in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We have no public presentations this evening, so we're going right into reports. We have 10.1 first up, and this is in regard to the Life Saving Society Affiliate Recognition Awards for 2021. And we have Miss Cynthia Cakebread with us this evening to speak on this. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. I've also got Sarah Newton, our Assistant Manager of Aquatics, Bree Rolls, our Acting Assistant Manager of Program, and Zach Koloss, our Deck Supervisor, who are all part of our team.
I should have mentioned too that Cynthia is our Manager of Recreation and Culture as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think we've done an outstanding job. I think a key highlight of this report is really the size of the program that we were able to run. And also in comparison, I think, to some municipalities that were a great deal bigger than us, going into population groupings that were 2 award groups above us. So I think it's really exceptional. The staff have been great at working not only to return our participants to the building safely, but really excelled in developing blended learning options when they couldn't be with us in person, and to keep people engaged and enrolled so that when they did return back, it was seamless and didn't feel like there were lapses to our programs or our participants. And if Zach could as well, if you could just show, these are our awards, he gets to be the lucky holder. He's new, so he gets the awards.
And I know you're being humble here, but would you mind mentioning a few of the awards that you did win so we understand what they're about?
Sure. The first one that we have is the Scarborough Cup, which is for the largest leadership program in a population of 10 to 50,000. And the R. Bread and Stapels is the largest leader, or probably got them backwards with it, not in front of me, the largest leadership program per capita for a single facility. So again, I've included in the report the comparables in all the different categories that we were in, and also the other categories in which we placed in the top 10. I think it's important to show that we are a top 15 program provider in the province out of over 900 affiliates, so it's really exceptional.
I think I see smiles on everyone's faces in this room. That's fantastic. We have always had a great team along with you to work and make sure that we are very proud of our recreation staff here in the town of Essex. You guys put a lot of effort into this, and we're very proud of that fact.
Thank you, sir.
I think you had another announcement maybe that was going to be super special.
I do. If I could get Shelley to pop up my first graphic. Oh, let me just get my notes open. So what you hopefully are looking at is the June of Recreation and Parks Month. What I'd like to share is beginning June 1st, we will be running our annual June is Recreation Parks annual movement that promotes the benefits of recreation and parks for physical, social, and environmental health. We're one of many communities across Ontario that have embraced this as a way to promote our local programs, our events, our parks and facilities that are available for everyone within the town of Essex and from outside of the town of Essex as well to enjoy. Then Shelley, can you just pop into the next one? What you're looking at now is also a little bit extra this year. We were fortunate to receive a participation grant. So we actually received some money from the Community Better Challenge, which works really well with our June is Recreation Parks initiative, as it allows us to offer a number of free programs throughout the month for people to come out and try it in the hopes that they'll enjoy that, or look for other programs as well. The other side of the Community Better Challenges, it's a nationwide initiative and contest. So basically what we'd like people to do is make use of the app, which is listed there under the Participation website, and they can log all of their exercise minutes that they do, and it goes towards the Town of Essex entry. So the Community Better Challenge is actually a geographic contest with winners named in both the province and nationally. We can aim high, but it's great to see people get active. We're also offering prizes from an internal Town of Essex contact. So up to 3 times a week, you can scan and just enter a quick form from the website and let us know how they got active that day, and we'll do draws each week for prizes. So the last is our summer programs. Registration will be beginning soon, and we have, again, a really great offering of programs and activities coming into the summer months and going forward.
Thank you for that, Cynthia. And I noticed on that previous screen with the different programs, a lot of the free ones were, they weren't the same that kind of activity. So there's a lot of activities that residents can try out, maybe that they wouldn't otherwise have tried.
That's exactly it. Yeah, great.
Yeah, looks fantastic. Any questions for our team, recreation team? Okay, it looks like we're all clear here. And again, congratulations from administration and from your council. We're very proud of the fact that you've worked so hard to get these awards, and that you continue year after year to get these awards.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So with that said, I need a motion from council to receive 2022-01 report, that the Life Saving Society annual report be received for council and public information. Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Councillor Bowman. All in favor of that motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next report, 10.2, is Legal and Legislative Services Report 2022-19. And this is in regard to the 2022 municipal election procedures for vote and vote counting equipment. We're looking at Legal and Legislative Services Report number 2022-19 be received for council and public information. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Are there any questions on this report? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 10.3 is Legal and Legislative Services Report 2022-20. This is in regard to election sign bylaw, and I'm going to go to our clerk, Mr. Robert Auger, to give us some details on this report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple comments. Council, all the way back in July of 2020, received a legal and legislative report which comprised an overall review of all election policies and procedures coming out of the 2018 election. One of the recommendations at that time was for the creation of a standalone election sign bylaw. The rationale and the thinking was that a more comprehensive standalone election sign bylaw was needed in order to address what was felt to be some insufficiencies as far as the amount of detail provided. That the existing election sign provisions located within the general sign bylaw itself, bylaw 1350, lacked details, and not only that, but lacked details that were lost within the overall, an overall very comprehensive general sign bylaw. So the thinking was that a separate standalone bylaw would make it easier to communicate sign rules to candidates during all elections, not just municipal elections, and as well allow for that bylaw to be updated or amended where and when needed, without having to impact that larger general sign bylaw. So this proposed new bylaw provides for more extensive definitions, details of the requirements around the use of those election signs, requirements or details concerning the timing, the placement, the location of the election signs throughout the municipality. One of the items that's certainly different from the current election sign provisions, and this came out of a recommendation to provide for some sort of deterrent, and this was recommended back in July 2020 in that report. What was needed was some sort of deterrence factor and to try to prevent the placing of the election signs in violation in the first place. So what came out of that is and that's in the new proposed bylaw, is the introduction of an election sign permit and required deposit that would go along with that permit. So the application would be submitted through the clerk's office for review and for approval. The clerk would receive information about the proposed sign, the proposed content of the sign, the sizes, dimensions. There would be an election sign deposit that would be potentially refundable. We have a proposed amount of $100 for ward candidates and $200 for at-large candidates, and that would be returned where there has been no violations to the election sign bylaw. The bylaw, as worded right now, gives the clerk full discretion to retain some or all of that deposit, together with the discretion to revoke any permits issued. And lastly, the new election sign bylaw also provides that violations could constitute an offense under Provincial Offences Act, including not obtaining and placing signs without a permit. So I'm open to any questions council may have, but that was just a quick overview of the proposed bylaw.
Councillor Bondi and then Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad to see this come forward. This is something that's been near and dear to me with everything that happened in the last election. My comment on the sign deposit, I think it's low. Like, for example, if I was running for mayor and I put $200 on the desk and had some sign violations, what's $200? You might get my attention at $2,000, but $200 to break some laws, I don't know if people might not take that seriously. And I also think that that money should be part of the spending limit, just because that if you want to hit somebody that's running, we've had experiences in the past where spending limits have been reached. So if that money was included in the spending limit, it would be a little more serious. And I'm just saying, like, if I was going to break a rule and I knew that that $1,000 was coming off my spending limit, I would take that more seriously, because with the spending limits in 2018 to the spending limits in 2022, the spending limits are the same. And I've just done some printing at the Harrow News, and the costs have gone up. So spending limits are going to be like a real reality this election. So that's one comment I have there. I'm also not sure if, I think the 3 days is just like really short. I would like to see it 5 days. That's okay. I think we can make it happen in 3 days, but I'm not sure if other to take down signs at the end. Like, say you have, 800 signs all over the municipality. Three days is like not a very small window after your campaign team has had boots on the ground for 4 years working hard. So I don't know if 5 days would be a little bit more realistic. And then, so I saw in there too that the signs have to say every election sign shall identify who's responsible for that messaging. So I have a question on that one, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Auger. Does that mean, like, we have to say this sign is from the campaign of, or if it says, vote for Councillor Guerin, is that enough? Or do you want it to have a little disclaimer on it? That's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be sufficient as long as it identifies the candidate. Where that would be more applicable is if you have a registered third-party advertiser. So that third-party advertiser would need to identify themselves on that sign, notwithstanding that the particular candidate's name is also on that sign.
Okay, and thank you. Further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, during the last election, we had a candidate that had town hall in the background. the same type of picture that we used when we hired actually Mr. Morissette, and we put him in the back and town hall was in the back. So it's having town hall, and it was questioned, it was challenged very much in the 2018 election. So is that type of picture not appropriate then according to our sign bylaw for the 2022 election?
Mr. Mayor, yes, it would not be appropriate. It would be a violation, and potentially both under the election sign bylaw, because that permit would need to be approved by the clerk, and there's provisions surrounding that. Also, the second policy, it would be in violation of the prohibition on use of corporate resources. So for that reason alone, the proposed sign wouldn't be approved under those, for the permit, wouldn't be approved under those circumstances.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. I still have a few more. I was under the understanding in 2018 that that was under the not valid in the use of corporate resources. So I'm really glad that we're tightening that up. So do signs, say I have a mock-up of a sign, does that need approval by the clerk's office as well? Through you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we would require, it doesn't have to be a finely, engineered drawing, but a sketch of what's proposed and the dimensions.
Okay, and further to that, the turnaround time for that approval, I think we're going to run into coroplast issues. So turnaround time for that approval might be something. Do we have a set turnaround time for candidates?
So based on the, through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the 2018 election, I think we had approximately, and I apologize, I have 24 candidates. So the turnaround time, provided the application is filled out and the information that's asked is provided, that turnaround time can be almost simultaneous within the next day. I mean, we're only looking at potentially getting permits in that. Well, I don't know, obviously, at this point. We'll have a better idea as of nomination day. But we're not talking about a great quantity overall. So the turnaround time would be very quick on this.
I have one final one. Election literature has not been covered in any discussion, and I view it as kind of like a sign, right? So last time in the election, we had town logos and election literature. We had pictures of our heritage plaque. We have pictures with the town mascot. So are we going to encompass any of that in our sign bylaw? Because election flyers went out with use of corporate resources, with town logos, with town mascots, and that wasn't captured, and that was a really big problem. If anybody wants to see the binder of complaints, I want to get ahead of that one too. So is there a mechanism where, say, you're going to approve our literature to make sure that town mascots aren't in our pictures?
If that information is provided as part of the sign application, then yes. And secondly, use of those particular corporate resources would be prohibited under the policy now as revised for 22.
And Mr. Mayor, one further comment to that. So that is something that when the election literature is already printed, and say you can print it and get it mailed out, it's gone, right? So how do we, I'm looking for a mechanism on how we can address that, because there were serious infractions. If you take our new policies and apply them on the old candidates' literature, many of us, they would be in violation. So I'm just looking for the clerk's advice on how we're going to handle election literature to make sure use of corporate resources, town logos, town mascots, heritage plaques are not going to be a thing in this year's election. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, again, as part of being proactive and trying to enforce the policy, the prohibition on the use of corporate resources, we will be asking candidates to provide those materials for review by the clerk's office.
Councillor Verbeek.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bondi pretty much covered most of my comments or concerns, but I also want to thank you, Mr. Auger, and your team for doing such a really good job on this sign bylaw. I too had some pretty serious concerns about the 3-day removal of signs, not so much for, like, I had over 200 signs and I was at it for 2 full days, my husband and myself, but if I was running a at large, I think that 3 days would be really tight to clean up all the signs.
Councillor Verbeek, Mr. Roger?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to Councillor Verbeek and Councillor Bondi, who both asked that question. We found that when we were reviewing other sound bylaws, it did average between 3 days, 5 days, like 3 days to 5 days in the majority of cases. Some were even extended out to a week's time. So I'd be looking for council's direction on that if 5 is a more reasonable time period. And then just further to the comment on the amount of the sign permit, we did debate what would be that appropriate amount. You do want an amount that it will act as a deterrent, but at the same time, you don't want that amount to be an impediment to someone looking to run for office either. So certainly we're open for council's direction on that as well. If council as a whole feels that those permit fees are not at the appropriate place.
I'm just looking at the bylaw right now. It does say 5 days in here after the voting day. It says not earlier than 45 days before the voting day and shall be removed not later than 5 days after the voting day.
Oh, removal of election signs, 12.1 says every owner shall remove all the owner's election signs within 72 hours, 3 days immediately following 11:59, the day of the election. So that is in the wording at 12.1. I remember reading 5 as well, but so.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, 5 days is currently what it provides, 45 and 5 days, but the intent was to have it at 3 days, but certainly, again, looking for council direction on that.
I'll make a motion, council, that we change the 3 to 5 days, because I do agree that's a lot of area to cover. Excuse me, the election's on the Monday. It gives you until, technically that way, if it's 5 business days, you've got till the following Monday. So it gives you that week and that weekend to get everything cleaned up. And the following Monday, there shouldn't be anything out. I think that's reasonable.
Any further questions on campaign materials? Councillor Vanderdolen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just noticed one potential confusion. We could ask you in September, but is 45 days before, is that on Friday the 9th, or is that Saturday, September 10th, that the first signs can go up?
Mr. Mayor, the intent was just 45 calendar days.
Yes, but some people would count the election day, some people wouldn't count the election day.
Right.
That would change it between 9th and 10th. So just need that clarified. Thanks.
So I would include election day, so I would take that as meaning September 10th would be that first day.
Thank you, Mr. Roger. Any further questions from council members? So I do have one question for Mr. Roger as well. So in regard to advertising a particular candidate, what about T-shirts and or jackets or hats walking into a voting station?
Mayor, those again would be violations, both under the election sign bylaw and potentially under prohibition against use of corporate resources, in that the voting places are municipal locations on election day.
Whether it be the candidate or one of the candidates. I'm just wondering how you keep control of someone that's, if it's not the candidate themselves.
So it would apply to anyone entering the voting place. There would be a prohibition against wearing any kind of paraphernalia that would identify that particular candidate.
Make it the same with a vehicle. If you had signs on your vehicle that you wouldn't be allowed to drive that vehicle to the voting station.
Correct.
Any further questions?
Clarification, because people that are residents wear what they want to wear, and if somebody that likes Mr. Mady goes to a polling station and he's wearing a "I support Jason Mady" shirt, we're going to tell him, sorry, you can't come in and cast your vote. I believe that the candidates cannot do that. As a candidate, you can't, but as general public, they decide that's the shirt they're going to put on and go vote that day.
Yeah.
I don't know how we keep them from doing that.
Mr. Mayor, I think I was confused on that one. I thought the reference beyond the candidates was to scrutineers. Someone there representing the candidate because sometimes you do have scrutineers who appear at the voting place. So that prohibition would apply by extension to the representatives of the candidate.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Okay, so I believe that we want to change this to 5 days. With that amendment, are we good with this? Okay. So I'm looking then for a motion. That's 10.3 to move receipt of report number 2022-20 and that bylaw number 2028 to regulate the use of election signs within the geographical boundaries of the town of Essex be received a first, second, and third time and passed this evening.
With the noted amendment.
With the noted amendment. Councillor Verbeek, you're moving. Supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Any further questions? All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Report 10.4. This is in regard to restricted acts, lame duck delegation of authority provisions. And we're looking to move this report 2022-21 be received, and that bylaw 2157 being a bylaw to temporarily delegate certain authorities during a lame duck council period be read a first and second time and be provisionally adopted this evening. Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Mady. I just have one question here, Mr. O'Shea. So I'm only seeing adopted or be read a first and a second time and provisionally adopted on today. Is that correct? Is that what you wanted? Okay, thank you. Thank you before we pass it. Any other questions? All in favor of that motion? Again, carried unanimously. Thank you. So we're next on to report 10.5, legal and legislative services report in regard to the election accessibility plan. And we're looking to have this report 2022-22 be received. We'll get a motion, and then if there's any questions, we'll follow up with questions. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Any questions from council members on this report? Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
I'd like to thank Clerk's Department for really doing some in-depth looking at this. When you read through it, it's just all the points of election, all the ways to get the word out, all the ways to make sure that everybody is accessible as possible and we're inclusive with this election. Right? It was a really good report. I think you really went in depth to get that. So thank you very much.
Mayor. Any further questions? See none, so all in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. For 10.6, again, legal and legislative services in regard to Court of Revision for the Long Marsh Drain, replacement and future bridge. That the following 3 members of the Drainage Board, Janice Doherty, Percy Dufour, and Mr. Felix White Benzel, be appointed to sit as members of the Court of Revision to be convened for 5 p.m. on June the 14th at the Essex Sports Complex Shaheen Room, and that bylaw 2154, a bylaw to provide for the Long Marsh Drain replacement and future bridge, be read a first and a second time and be provisionally adopted this evening. So I'm looking for support on this. I'm going to move. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Vanderdolen. Are there any questions? All in favor of that motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Report number 10.7. This is in regard to amendments to procedural bylaw and electronic participation in meetings. And before we vote on this or talk about it, I'm going to go to Mr. Auger, our Manager of Legal and Legislative Services.
At Council's last regular meeting on May 2nd, Council received Legal and Legislative 2022-16, excuse me, in which Council was asked if it endorsed the status quo provisions of the procedural bylaw relating to electronic participation outside of a declared emergency, or if it wished to provide additional direction. Council had some deliberation and discussion at that meeting, and the direction was to return to Council with some proposed amendments that would be reflective of that Council discussion. So I just wanted to quickly walk through for Council the proposed amendments. This proposed bylaw would provide for the following going forward. Firstly, Council members may participate in regular and special meetings electronically when there's an extraordinary situation preventing that Council member from participating in person. So the mayor or the CAO would have the discretion as far as any request for electronic participation by a Council member. Not more than 3 Council members can participate in the same regular or special meeting electronically, meaning that that Council member participating electronically because of a personal emergency or something personal that's come up, they would still be considered present at the meeting. They would still be entitled to vote at the meeting, but they would not count towards quorum. So 5 members of Council for the regular and special meetings would still need to be in person. Secondly, any or all Council members would be able to participate electronically in any emergency Council meeting or in any closed meeting of Council. And by extension, such electronic participation would count towards determination of quorum. Thirdly, members of town administration may attend electronically any meeting of Council. Fourth, delegations, public delegations would have the option to attend any meetings of Council either electronically, any open meetings of Council, either electronically or in person. Open meetings of Council then would be available for public in-person attendance. Sixth, where and when feasible, all regular and special meetings of Council would be further live streamed. And then any members participating in a committee or local board may only participate in person in such committee meetings unless we're in a time of declared emergency. And as we advised Council back at the May 2nd meeting, we will be working on and preparing an extensive report on all committees with proposed recommendations for the next term of Council. And with that, if Council has any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
So I will ask questions first. Mr. or Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
Right through you. Good report, lots of great things in here, but I disagree with not allowing members that are meeting virtually to not be counted for quorum for a regular meeting. If we're going to allow councilors to not be here, and up to 3 could not be here, if one person doesn't have the opportunity, they get sick, they can't make the meeting, we can't hold a meeting. There can be 7 people prepared to meet as council, but because 3 won't be counted towards quorum, that meeting will not happen. And considering that we've just gone through 2 years of meeting virtually and all of us being counted for quorum, I don't see why quorum can't be attained using people that are on Zoom.
Mr. Roche, you have a response?
To Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, in the scenario that you just described, are you referring to 7 members who would be in person or 7 members electronically?
8-member council, 3 have requested to be on Zoom, and then one of the people who was going to be in quorum can't make it. Whatever, something happens because you have to be by 9 o'clock that morning. So if at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, something happens that calls you away, we can't hold a council meeting because that fifth person isn't in the room. But there are 7 people ready to go. I just don't think, I think with all we've been through, it would be my recommendation that we not force people who are not able to attend not to be quorum, because we've just finished doing that for 2 years. Thank you.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, yes, under that scenario, Deputy Mayor is correct. Again, we're looking for council direction on this. So if the direction is for there to be accounting towards quorum, regardless if electronic or in person, then certainly this can be amended to reflect that. Just there would be then, and then I guess through that, there would be scenarios where you could have 7 members of council. Yeah, so in the scenario, the suggestion would still be for up to 3, but those 3 would count as quorum. Yeah, with council's direction, that we could amend it to reflect that.
But just technically in that instance, if you only have 7 members showing up for the meeting, what is your quorum?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if you have 7 members in person or electronic?
7 members for the meeting, because one that was going to show up at council chambers didn't show up because they were sick or
Right.
couldn't be there at the last minute.
But 7 in person or electronic?
4 in the council chambers,
Yeah.
and 3 electronically.
So to you and further to the Deputy Mayor's comments, the meeting would fail for lack of quorum under that scenario, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, and through your honor, I think the issue really is that we were trying to put out the fact that we wanted the people in the council chambers. Under the scenario that was put out forth by the deputy mayor, that the individual isn't able to attend after basically the time limit that was set. I would suggest that under those situations, that a motion from council at the particular meeting to allow one or more of the absent or online people to act as a voting member, or possibly all 3 of them. That would eliminate any issues there, but still trying to maintain the fact that the majority of people, or of basically 5 people, are going to be in the council chambers. This would, sort of handle the situation where you have a late minute cancellation. If the fact that they announce that 4 people are going to be away, then the meeting should be canceled ahead of time. Just my thoughts. And I would, if that's, if people agree with that, I would make the motion that scenario be put in place. Thank you.
Back to you. Councillor Bowman. I have Councillor Vanderdolen and then Councillor Verbeek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I agree with the deputy mayor's suggestion. But why are we having a limit at all? Like, we just had 2 years where nobody was in the room. I could foresee there could be some fluke. I mean, we all want to be in this room, and I think we're all going to be. But there's quite a possibility that 2 people are on vacation and somebody gets sick, or somebody, Why carve this in stone and create a potential future problem by having a limit on how many people can Zoom if we've been doing it for 2 years without any issue? I mean, if it becomes a problem, if somebody abuses it, then we could change it. But I just don't see any reason to paint ourselves in a corner. Thank you.
Councillor Verbeek?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for bringing that forward. That was one of my concerns. I mean, if we want to be able to attend the meeting through Zoom, we have to go through the mayor and the CAO. And I just feel that we should, everybody that's in attendance via Zoom or in person should count towards quorum. And I appreciate you bringing that forward.
Any further comments? Mr. Roger?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. All good discussion and considerations. Again, I believe the original approach was to, by having that quorum requirement, was to encourage the holding of in-person meetings, but as well to allow for some level of flexibility. That was really just the intent. But certainly whether the provision is changed to provide that, you know, any members, whether participating electronically or in person, shall count as quorum, or if council gives consideration to Councillor Bowman's suggestion, whereby the requirement would stay in place, but council would have that flexibility to defeat a quorum dropping by passing a resolution at that particular meeting. It would still go along the ways of trying to encourage those in-person meetings when feasible, of course, as opposed to just making it, you know, quorum counting. So both are potential solutions to this.
Any further comments? Councillor Bondi?
Are we just talking about council meeting in person, or can we talk about the special council meetings being Zoomed too, or live streamed on YouTube? I think that the special council meetings, I think it's in our benefit and in the sake of transparency to keep them on YouTube. I think our residents are accustomed to watching the special council meetings. I also think we don't really have a big enough space to allow residents to come here, you know, and we don't know who's going to come to a meeting and who's not going to come to a meeting, but we know that everybody at home has the option to watch on YouTube. You know, we may say that a special council meeting on, I don't know, a new McDonald's or something isn't contentious, but those residents may think it's contentious, and then we don't have capacity for them. So I would love to see for the remainder of this term that we have our special council meetings live streamed as well. I don't know if you're looking for direction on that, but I don't want to lose that.
Mayor, certainly that's the intent. The intent is, and we recognized really early on during the pandemic the tremendous value that live stream has for both the regular and the special meetings. I think there was suggested language where feasible, because, you know, depending on where the location of that special meeting would be, it might entail some additional IT requirements, some additional expenses, resources, if council were to have special meetings at what I would call off-site locations as opposed to here at Town Hall. So there, I was trying to draft to provide for some flexibility in those circumstances.
Okay, so looking for some direction here then from council. I'll come back to Councillor Bowman.
Make that motion that we allow, keep the quorum requirement in there, with the exception if somebody fails to show at the meeting, that the council have the authority to grant the online people the option of being recorded or as a quorum. That accomplishes, I think, what we're trying to do, promoting the on-site or the in-person meetings, and still allows for any issues that may pop up.
Councillor Bowman, I am looking for support on that motion. Councillor Vanderdolen, any more questions? Looking for all in favor of that motion. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, that is, and I should have said in here, no, we'll go to the bylaw afterwards because I'm going to ask about the special meeting situation. Or do you want that as a separate and pass this bylaw?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, what I was going to suggest is maybe council could consider 2 readings this evening. I would make the amendment by way of the resolution that was just passed and bring it back to council for 3rd reading.
Thank you. That's what we'll do. Councillor Bondi, did you want to make a motion maybe on the special meetings of some type?
You think we need one? Sure. That special council meetings for the remainder of this term be live streamed? Yeah.
So live streamed when and where applicable, special council meetings, and when not, they won't be. Yeah, okay, thanks.
All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously? Okay, and we'll ask Mr. Auger to bring that bylaw back to us next meeting, next public meeting, bylaw number 2159 with the revision. 10.8. This is an extension of the draft plan approval of phase 3 of the Woodview Estates residential subdivision. That planning report 2022-04 be received. That council approve a 3-year extension of the draft plan of subdivision. And then administration be directed to notify the manager of planning of the County of Essex. Looking for a motion on that. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Any questions? Any questions on this? All in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.9. This is in regard to red line revisions for phase 3 of the Woodview Estates residential subdivision. That planning report 2022-13 be received. That council approve the requested red line revisions to the draft plan of subdivision. That an easement be registered over block 74 for the purposes of maintenance and operation of the SWMF. That the owner acknowledges that the temporary stormwater management facility may be considered permanent if the pond becomes a habitat for wildlife, or if for any reason the expansion of the Woodview storm management facility is not feasible or permitted by regulatory agencies and stakeholders, and that the manager of planning services for the County of Essex be advised accordingly. Looking for a mover. Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. Are there any questions on this report? Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Through you, I thought that all these streets were going to be drained to the south of Highway 3. We've got those 3 new sewers. There's going to be new storage ponds dug. I thought that this whole neighborhood was going to be covered. Why are we requesting this 2 little streets have their own storage pond? Is this something IRCA imposed on us?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the temporary stormwater management facility is required because the stormwater guidelines have changed substantially since the original build out of that pond. So the existing Woodview pond isn't large enough for volume and doesn't treat water from a quality perspective to meet the guidelines of today.
Just a final question. How many housing lots did it cost us in this case?
Through the mayor, 4.
Okay, thank you very much.
All in favor of the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Report number 10.10. This is in regard to site plan control amendment for 1110 Ridge Road. That planning report 2022-14 be received. and that bylaw 2147 being a bylaw to amend the site plan control agreement between the corporation and the town of Essex and Upper Canada Growers Land, Inc. be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this evening.
Mayor, I'd like to declare conflict. Thank you.
Bondi? Looking for a motion to move. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Vanderdolen. Any questions on this report? Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
Mayor, through you, just looking at the site plan, and we're looking at where the new bunkhouses, so I want to just understand that what we are doing tonight is allowing the two new bunkhouses as well as the warehouse to be erected as they sit on the site plan. Is that correct?
Director Chadwick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to to Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. That is correct. So essentially, the property owner can move to building permit stage following this amendment to their existing site plan control agreement.
Okay, so just follow up to that, a comment. So we're finding that the two new bunkhouses end up being 30, 50 meters closer to the windmill than the existing bunkhouses that we approved that were already too close based on our rules about building houses within or having windmills erected near houses. So I just want to clarify that it's 97 feet of existing septic and then another 70 feet of houses. So we're that much closer to the windmill for the two new bunkhouses. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Okay, so we're going against our own building rules again. We wouldn't allow a windmill to go up there, but we're going to put housing for workers into that area. So we've talked about this right from the start. Those needed to be further away. I understand they're, I will give up the floor for a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize, Deputy Mayor. I misunderstood your question. It is further away. The bunkhouses are further away from the wind turbine. Further away from where we originally discussed from the zoning bylaw amendment approval.
So what they are, the new bunkhouses are closer to the windmill than the first bunkhouses that were built. The new bunkhouses are 170 feet closer to the windmill than the original bunkhouses that were put up. The original bunkhouses, we made an exception and allowed them to be closer than our regulations for windmills to buildings, to housing. So I'm just saying we requested that they put those bunkhouses back as far as the previous ones were because we had already made a concession for that. So this has been a long time coming. They started this plan a long time ago before these other buildings were built. I believe if they wanted to, they could have put them back there. We wouldn't allow anyone to build, we wouldn't allow windmills to be closer to our residents and our residential areas. So I won't be supporting this as long as those bunkhouses keep getting closer to the windmill. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We're back to square one. This is where, the proponent for this had stated when we showed opposition to building these bunkhouses less than the 550 meters that was recommended by so many different agencies, and we, came forward with the letter from the Justic, I don't want to mess up the name, the letter for an advocacy group that was, that they sent us, to advocate for the people that were going to be staying in these bunkhouses. The proponent said, I've got lots of space. I can definitely fall within the recommendations of the 550. I can move these. And it feels like we're right back to where we started. So I'm not sure why we're looking at this again, when the proponent even told us that he could fall within the recommended guidelines. And I know it's changed twice, but we're still closer to the windmills than they should be, or than they have to be. So, I mean, as the deputy mayor pointed out, we wouldn't ask that of any of our residents. And I know at one meeting, there was this urgency attached to this because we're going to, shut down this farmer from bringing in the migrant workers. But we know darn well nothing's going to happen. This isn't going to affect this season. These aren't going to be built in 2 weeks. So I don't know what the urgency would be when, I wouldn't support this the way it is. I think that we should be going outside the recommendations of distancing from the windmills when we've watched years of people that have had to live near them, identify issues that they've experienced living in too close to them.
Council, or I'm going to go to Director Chadwick first, and then I'll come to you. Director Chadwick.
Thank you once again, Mr. Mayor. So just so I'm understanding the conversation, and just to clarify for sake of what we're looking at tonight, the zoning bylaw amendment application was approved by council, and attached to that application was the noise assessment or the acoustic study. So that zoning has already been approved. We're now at the site plan control process, where we would look at location of entrances and exits, number of parking spaces, etc. The zoning bylaw amendment application, that noise study that was required as a part of that, the recommendations in the noise memo would be and are a part of the site plan agreement and would be imposed as a part of that site plan agreement. And that includes building materials, as well as other mitigation measures in order to support that reduction in setback between the dwellings and the wind turbine. Furthermore, I just want to go back to the report, which I just had. Ms. Jabour, our Manager of Planning Services, has indicated that since the special meeting in February, the location of the proposed bunkhouses was amended to be located closer to the existing bunkhouses, further increasing the distance between the wind turbines and the dwellings and the bunkhouses. So there has been an increase. The noise study was completed assuming that the bunkhouses were going to be closer than where they actually will be located. Thank you.
Director Chadwick, I have Councillor Vanderdolen, and then Councillor Verbeek, and then Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I have no problem with this. Originally they came to us wanting these closer. They've moved them further away, which is kind of ruining their soccer field for the workers, which is too bad, but it's a compromise. I just want to remind council that these bunkhouses can go in worse places for the town and the workers. I mean, this company has the right to place these bunkhouses right on County Road 50 if they wanted to. I think it's better going where they're going. And also it has to be pointed out that this 550 rule, a lot of this being made of it, that rule was introduced so that these turbines wouldn't be built near a subdivision more closely than 550 meters. Not that nobody could ever build within 550 of them. And also you have to be reminded that these things only turn 28% of the time. So more than 2/3 of the year, they're not even moving. They're not even making a sound. The 28% of the time when they are moving, the prevailing winds west, 90% going east. The sound, it would only be a couple times a year that people in these bunkhouses would hear those, could possibly hear those turbines. And they're soundproofed so tightly that a loud generator running right outside one of these bunkhouses can't be heard inside. So I think all this concern about the workers is misplaced. I think some outside groups are trying to use this issue to further other aims, but I'm going to approve this. I'm in favor of it. Thank you.
Councillor Verbeek.
Mr. Mayor, my motivation to oppose putting it any closer than the 550, recommended is because people that do live in proximity have concerns and have experienced, disruptive sleep and certain, there's many complaints attached to it. When I was originally reading up on this, there were several municipalities, there were several different countries where the recommendation was 2,000 foot setback, and that the 550 is minimal compared to some. So I don't know why, when the proponent told us that, finding a place for the bunkhouses within the recommended 550 would be an issue. And my question, I guess now, is exactly how much under the 550 are we? Like, we're like 450 or something meters away now? And what's the exact distance now with the moving, even after eliminating the soccer fields and putting them closer to the other bunkhouses?
Looking that answer up for you. While she's looking for, did you have for anything further, Councillor Verbeek?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just that I'd like to do this right. There isn't an urgency. The farmer has stated to us that he has X amount of, options to at least meet the 550 meter recommendation, where these people will be living and working from.
Director Chadwick, I believe, has an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Verbeek. The ancillary dwellings will now be located at 429 meters away from the wind turbine. And again, just to reiterate, the zoning bylaw amendment has been approved for the provision of the bunkhouses, and during that special meeting, as well as report to council after that special meeting, the discussion on other sites besides the current soccer fields was discussed with the applicant at length, and there were limited areas as to where the existing bunkhouses could be located besides the soccer fields. In other words, on other parts of the property would not be suitable for various reasons, as discussed in February and April. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Chadwick. Councillor Verbeek again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, when that zoning when that came to us, council voted to pass that, with the understanding that when the site plan agreement came back to us, we would at that point be able to address the offset, the 550. And I understood we were only passing that piece so that when it came back to us, it would be within the 550 or more setback from the windmills. And that's why indeed we passed the first, so that when the site plan agreement came back to us, it would then fall within the recommendations.
So, Councillor Verbeek, what I'm understanding is that when we passed last time, we asked for the bunkhouses to be moved up to where the soccer field was going to exist. And as long as they could meet the criteria of making the house soundproof, that we would allow for those bunkhouses to be where the soccer field was being proposed. And council passed that already. So my question to Director Chadwick then is, what is it that we're looking at this evening to try and pass?
So the amendment to the site plan agreement that was originally approved, I feel like it was 2020 or 2021, that originally had the extension or expansion rather of a greenhouse, the provision and the location for 2 greenhouses. So tonight, the amendment for the site plan agreement will ensure essentially the stormwater management plan has been accepted and approved by the town, the servicing drawings and design drawings, knowing that there will be a future warehouse, another greenhouse, and the location of the bunkhouses as well. So the agreement that was already established in 2021, we'll say, or 2020. We're asking for an amendment to that agreement to allow for those bunkhouses, the warehouse, and greenhouse. From there, the provisions for site servicing, stormwater management, et cetera, at the time of the building permit phase, that these studies have all been approved and accepted by administration and can move to construction.
Further, you've mentioned bunkhouses again. So we're approving tonight that bunkhouses can be built or cannot be built.
Thank you again. So the bunkhouses originally from 2020, let's just say for argument's sake, were council approved 2 originally. February of 2022 and April of 2022, council approved through zoning bylaw amendment another 2 for a total of 4. So 2 have already been built and have been well established. This amendment to the site plan agreement will not only allow for the construction of these 2 additional ones, but also the warehouse and greenhouse expansion.
What's not being passed tonight is where they go. Just the fact that they can build them.
No, it's included in the site plan itself. The location of the bunkhouses as established under the site plan agreement and the site plan itself are a part of this agreement that we're asking council to pass.
Okay. So, but what Councillor Verbeek was asking was, can we still ask for them not to be in that location?
Council can always choose to defer the application before you for further investigation. And as indicated, we have done our review and have established that this location is acceptable from, again, a noise and acoustics perspective. The study that showed that the levels would be acceptable at that location, and then furthermore would still, by logic, be acceptable. And essentially that if council chooses to defer, it would be for purposes of requiring further information or investigation.
Thank you. Okay, I have Councillor Bowman up next.
Yes, and through you, Your Honor. To just reiterate some of the comments Mr. Vanderdolen made, and we were there at different times, I believe, but the real issue is the noise mitigation that is for the workers in their borders. And I attended the bunkhouses as well when we went through it. And again, there was machinery running right outside, high-pitched motor actually, running at high RPMs. There wasn't iota of that sound inside that bunkhouse. So whatever noise mitigation they're using, it is working, and it is working well. So I think that's the real issue that has been, I think we've all been concerned about, is there really that noise mitigation put into the planning of these bunkhouses? And I think that's the real reason they have the setbacks, because if they're putting up a new wind turbine, it has to have those distances, because the houses that are already there do not have any noise mitigation, where these bunkhouses do. And I was impressed with the sound mitigation that they have in place. Any noise going on outside, you don't hear anything in there. So it was, and they're well, air conditioned, heated, the whole bit. They're extremely good units, and I think that sort of tells me that they're meeting the requirements for their workers, and that impressed me when I was there. So I'll support the motion. Thank you.
Bowman, Councillor Guerin.
To administration, couple of questions. The setbacks for the distance between the windmill and any, we'll call it just the bunkhouses, do they allow for the construction of the bunkhouse, take into consideration those type of noise mitigations, or do they say you just can't be within it either way?
Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councillor Guerin, great questions. These are mitigations. So in other words, where there is a request for something to be in variance essentially, or not in full conformance, there's always an opportunity for maybe if it's an engineer, in this case, an acoustics engineer, to show us and to prove that by varying away from that requirement, that it is not impactful or not of an impact to those residents. In this case, the applicant has the required acoustics engineering report that has been accepted. The mitigation measures in that report will be a part of the building permit stage and approvals. So building permits would not be issued until check, whether it's windows or the materials of the foundations or whatever it is, the framing rather, that it would be required.
That through you. Okay, so in the first two bunkhouses that were put in, were they put to that same standard with the noise mitigation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't recall at this point. I believe it was an amendment to the zoning bylaw, and I don't think as a part of that there was a noise study, but I can certainly look while we're discussing.
So that's, okay, well, I'm not totally opposed to it. If he can do noise mitigation, it's not a situation where he can't build within a certain space. If he does noise mitigation, he can go through with it, but he's putting extra money into doing his noise mitigations and doing these tests. Has he been asked why he can't just put them, like I'm looking at this drawing, in the same alignment as where the existing two are, and move the storage building to where the proposed two new bunkhouses are going to be? Is there a reason why they can't go back in alignment? Does he have a particular reason why?
Mr. Mayor, I believe the response was of varying degrees. There, do you mean, Councillor Guerin, just adjacent to the existing bunkhouses, right adjacent to it?
Yes, so where it says gravel yard, why can't they go there and the future frame storage building be put where the two proposed are going to be? Why couldn't he just flip-flop them? And then I think we're all happy because his other two are that far away. And
Director Chadwick?
During any site plan control process, a lot of this has been reviewed through administration. I can't answer as to why the location is where they are versus why they aren't located at the storage building or the gravel yard. I can't answer this on hand tonight, but certainly it's reviewed for conformity with zoning bylaw as well as movement on site, and to ensure that the design and the construction will ultimately be in keeping with good design and good planning. As presented, it has been accepted and we brought forward to council for decision making.
Thank you, Director. I think Councillor Vanderdoen might add something.
Through you, from my recollection of what we were told here in Chambers and my conversations with the company, they've only built a couple of small components of an overall big plan to have quite an operation here. These people are in the process of acquiring 2,000 acres, and they hope to one day have a packing plant. And they don't want the packing plant, I believe, to be behind the bunkhouses. They also didn't want the bunkhouses close to, I believe there's a residential neighbor, and so they wanted the bunkhouses further away from their neighbors. That's why they didn't put them on the road. And they've got these future plans for other buildings. So, this isn't just about one bunkhouse. This is, I would just guess, a $5 to $10 million next step investment for food we badly need, jobs we badly want, and jobs for these itinerant workers too. I mean, if we kick this down the road again, I don't know, isn't that reconsideration? We've already approved it in principle. We said if they meet all these conditions, then we would approve it. They have met all those conditions, and I believe we should approve it. I think it would be wrong to try and block this by delaying it. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The noise, I was under the impression when we passed bylaw 2146 that we were okaying that 2 buildings were going to be built on the property, and that during this meeting we would decide if they were being built in the area that was accepted by us, or that we felt was right. And I was looking for that noise study to be able to see if the noise mitigation is going to work. I was really interested that what types of materials they're using now, what sounds they're actually looking to block, because a wind turbine makes a totally different noise than a generator does. I wanted to make sure that we were looking to target that infrasound that is the prime source for all these complaints that happen when people are near these windmills. But what I'm getting right now is that when we passed bylaw 2146, we okayed those buildings in that area. Is that true?
Mayor, through to Councillor Mady, we approved the zoning to add 2 additional bunkhouses as land uses. We were directed by council to have the applicant look at a different location during the time of site plan, which is what we're here showing council and bringing forward for decision making. So zoning approves uses, the land uses, site plan approves location. And as we were directed at the time, we did review the acoustics report as a part of even the zoning, and it identified that under the mitigation measures as recommended by an acoustics engineer and accepted by administration, that the location of the future bunkhouses closer than what you see in front of you tonight was acceptable under these mitigation measures, identified again and will be implemented as part of the building permit process.
I'd just like to add a comment. So I know the province put in a 550 meter distance between wind turbines and existing homes, because existing homes don't have any noise mitigation. So what they believe is that they're not going to have any existing home have to experience any sound or vibration experiences that would be negative. Not everybody has bad experience with the wind turbines, but there are some cases where it does happen. And we have some of those that happened in that area at when we first installed wind turbines. But something that a lot of people don't realize is that our Harrow Wind Turbine Farm, the original one further west, actually only had a minimum distance of 350 meters. So some of those wind turbines are only 350 meters from some individuals' homes. And some of those homes are actually surrounded by wind turbines that are 350 meters from their home. And those homes have not been sound mitigated. And I don't know that everybody there is complaining. Some people are having definite problems. I know that. And I've spoken with those individuals over the years. But this is an instance where they're looking to build a home that actually has the sound mitigation. And they're asking if they can go a little bit closer. It's 425, I believe, is probably what we're talking about, away from the wind turbine, which still exceeds what we thought was correct amount before the province came out with a standard. The town of Essex developed a standard ourselves for 350 meters, going back to our first wind turbine farm that we actually had installed. So my belief is because of the mitigation. I mean, I'm hoping that a sound company that is doing a study is actually they know what they're up against. I don't believe that they would put their reputation on the line to say, oh, you know what, it's kind of okay. They know what they're up against. They know that they're trying to mitigate wind turbine vibration sound. So I think if the report comes back and it says that, yeah, based on our findings, we're experts here on sound and vibration. We think that this house structure, not a normal house structure, any of your other ones, like a normal house that anybody else would build, but this one's a special house. We believe that you could get to this distance and these persons that would be living in this house would be fine. So that's what I'm looking at. And I haven't seen I would have liked to have seen the report as well, but I believe any company is not going to put their reputation on the line to give this Upper Canada growers the right to build these. That would be silly of them, because then they wouldn't have the reputation to do other projects. So I've got to tend to believe that the sound company, the one that's doing the study on this, knows what they're talking about. So that's my belief. I believe I'm going to be in favor of this motion that to approve the site plan. We asked them to move it up. I think it was Deputy Mayor Bjorkman that asked for them to move up closer. They wanted to put a soccer field in that one space between the bunkhouses, but we asked them to move it up so that right after the weeping bed for the first set of bunkhouses, they would build bunkhouses again and then put the weeping bed on the side that's closer to the wind turbine. So they've said, yes, that's not the way we'd like to see it, but we will absolutely move it closer if that's what council wants to see. And now we're looking at it, we're saying, hey, you know what, we made you spend money on a sound study, and I'm sure it was very costly. I'm sure it was probably over $10,000, but I can't say for sure. We gave them the impression that we were going to do that. We've actually passed a bylaw that said we were going to allow you to build 2 more bunkhouses. We're just trying to figure out where on this property. And now we're thinking about not allowing it. So in my mind, I think in good faith, and trusting that the wind turbine, this consultant that they've hired for sound is reputable, that we have to believe that this is going to be okay, in my thoughts. Councillor Verbeek?
So just some clarity, because I feel we're going to be going to the vote very soon. I'm in no way opposed to building these ancillary buildings, these bunkhouses. And but when this came to us, I guess it would be February, the first time he wanted to build the number 3 and number 4, we said, wait a minute, that's too close to the wind turbines. And so he said, okay, I'll eliminate the soccer field and move them forward. Then it comes in front of us in April, much like it is now, with the soccer field gone, but there's still 120 meters shy of the 550 meters setback that's recommended by all kinds of organizations and the ministry. And if we were reading, as I was reading up, in many municipalities, it's 1,500 and 2,000 recommended setbacks. So I understood in April that we were quickly approving the land use because, yes, we definitely support these 2 new buildings, but that Director Chadwick and your team and the farmer were going to come back to us with the setback, at least meeting the 550 meter setback. I understood that that noise mitigation study was going to be done, but there were also a number of other things being taken into consideration, right? And it is, from my understanding, from anything I read about effects of living in proximity to the wind turbines, it's not just the sound. There's definitely, as the mayor mentioned, vibration issues. So I feel bad because I can see all the work that you are doing on this, but I felt like in April we said, sure, we all support this, but we want to at least meet the minimum recommendations where they land on this piece of property, because as the proponent told us, he owns like hundreds and hundreds of acres. They could be just about anywhere, right? Thank you.
Any further comments? Yes, Director Chadwick.
And just a final comment, just to clarify that we'll call them 3 and 4. Thank you, Councillor Verbeek. So 3 and 4 could not be located closer to 1 and 2 because of existing septic beds that were already there. And moving, we'll call it south, into the gravel yard, I believe it was Councillor Guerin that suggested. I now understand through jogging my memory that it was as a result of a future storage building and the location movement from loading dock from the future warehouse to the future storage building, the requirement that it be congruent or essentially next to each other, and that the 3 and 4 could not be located further south. So the best location and the only possible location is as proposed at 1 and 2, space, we'll call it for existing septic beds, 3 and 4, proposed septic beds, and then the stormwater management pond. Anything closer or anything further, so anything on the site plan elsewhere would also put you closer to the windmill. Thank you.
I think we've had lots of discussion on this. It's time to, Councillor Bowman. Thank you. Supported by Councillor Vanderdolen. I'll ask the question. All in favor of the motion? So there's 5 opposed and 2 opposed. Thank you. Next report is 10.11, Fire and Rescue Services 2022-06. And this is, we're asking that Fire and Rescue Services Report 2022-06 be received. The council will award the request for tender to City View Specialty Vehicles, and that council approves the additional funding of $52,847.42 over and above the $1.5 million that was budgeted from the town's asset management reserves to purchase the new single axle rear mount aerial platform truck. Councillor Verbeek moves, supported by Councillor Guerin. Are there any questions? I see we have Chief Arnell up on the screen there. Welcome, Chief. Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
Like to hear the chief brag about the new machine for a couple minutes.
Through your worship, thank you, Deputy Mayor. As the report says, we're still working through the master plan, and this is part of our master plan that council approved little over 5 years ago. We're going down from 2 units down to 1. This unit, what we were able to do, working in conjunction with finance and Jackson Tang, we came up with 2 options. Option 1 was a single axle 80 to 100 foot aerial platform, and a tandem axle 80 to 100 foot platform. Our team went through the tenders, and what we found was the tandem axle was we had the low bid, our low tender was there, and that tender met all of our expectations of the unit. So we're very happy to be getting a new truck. Problem, it's going to take a little while because of issues with getting parts and pieces. We're talking about 60 weeks for delivery of this unit. We have 1 unit now that's been decommissioned due to extensive cost to repair, so we're not going to repair it, and we're going to keep the other unit running from now until next August or so. We're hoping to be able to get the new unit in. So the team out at Station 2 and the team that went over the information, it was unanimous on this decision. Just a little side note, I talked to 4 manufacturers last August. We had enough money in the budget. We've had a 24% increase on the price of fire apparatus since last August, and they're planning another 7% July 1st. So I was praying and hoping to come in under budget, but I wasn't able to. So, but again, we're ecstatic to be able to get this piece of equipment, and our team is more than ready to be able to get a new piece of apparatus in the building.
Thank you, Chief, for that description. And it's nice that we have a place that we can park it and it fits. So with that said, looking to see all in favor of that motion. Carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief, for being here tonight. Next report is 10.12, Capital Works and Asset Management. And I'm going to go to Director Gerard to speak on this. Essex Streetscape update and schedule.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So this report was created to provide an update to Council for the Essex Centre streetscape. As identified in the report, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Canadian construction industry has been experiencing significant delays, especially with supply chain issues for essential materials like water mains, sewers, streetlights, and electrical materials. The Essex Centre streetscape is a 7-month project where if there were no supply chain issues, it would take 7 months. So if we began construction in 2022, this would leave a significant amount of work unfinished through the winter, which could pose some issues with safety and accessibility. For this reason, administration is recommending that aspects of the streetscape be delayed to 2023, which would likely make bidding more competitive and will reduce construction impact to local businesses and residents. What administration is recommending to be completed in 2022 is the ordering of all materials to be construction ready for the spring of 2023. If possible, to complete the underground infrastructure, anything that can be completed this year. The Victoria Avenue roadworks and multi-use trail can be completed in 2022. And if possible, some works at the outer limits of the project on Talbot from Gosfield to Bryan and from Talbot from Maidstone to Medora can also be completed. As identified in the report, this work would be completed between approximately October to November of this year, with the remainder of the work to be completed or started in May and be finished by October of 2023. With that, I'll open it up to Council for any questions.
Councillor Guerin.
Thank you. So, Mr. Gerard, thanks for the report. Residents in Ward 1 have been waiting to see what's going on, especially our businesses. It's disappointing, but I guess under the circumstances, it's probably the best way to go. I'm happy to hear that Victoria will get done this year. That's another one of those roads that has been a long time coming. So, yeah, those are my comments. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Councillor Guerin, any further comments? Councillor Bowman and then Councillor Verbeek.
Just a quick comment. I think this sort of sets the record out there, and our residents and more importantly, our businesses in the downtown area can move forward on their plans knowing that when it's going to happen. So I think that's an important step. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Director Gerard. For all your work on this. I guess it's a good thing, right? Because everybody knows, like Councillor Bowman pointed out, and maybe by doing, the underground and Victoria and that this year, when our main street is torn up, it might go a little bit quicker because big chunks of the project will be done already, perhaps. I was asked at the Coam Park walk around last week to continue to request any of the cast-offs, the lights and the planters, and I know benches, and I know that I have, but I've been asked to keep asking. So just planting a bug in your ear.
Your Honor, through you, I just want to thank the administration for finding a way to make lemonade with the lemons we were handed. You have to point this out. This isn't nobody's fault. This is just the supply chain, and everybody knows how that's messed up. So Too bad it's a little bit slower, but we'll get most of it done. Thanks.
Any further comments? And I do believe, just as a final comment, that this is something that we have to do. We've seen with our Harrow Streetscape project how disappointing it can be not to have everything delivered on time, to have it finished as we want to have it finished. And I think to avoid any of that confusion and frustration, this is a great idea. I know you'd want to get it done as quickly as possible, but you're facing realities. We're just not going to get the supplies in on time. This gives us plenty more time to have an opportunity to get them in early in the next round. And like you said, pricing is a little bit high right now on some of the stuff, some of the product, because it's in short supply. And we're hoping that a lot of that underground stuff will be less expensive going into the following years. So although it's disappointing to everyone because we wanted to see it done as soon as possible, I think you've made the right decision in presenting this to us. So with that said, I'll ask for a motion. I'll have a motion then that Capital Works and Assessment Management Report 2022-02 be received. Councillor Guerin, and supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next report is 10.13. This is in regard to County Road 20 connecting link rehabilitation. I'm looking for that Capital Works and Asset Management Report 2022-04 be received. That council approve the expenditure of $100,000 for the town of Essex share of the rehabilitation of County Road 20 from Walnut Street South to the eastern limit of the County Road 20 connecting link from unspent OCIF money. And Councillor Bondi is moving this motion, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Councillor Bondi and then Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank Sean Mulder, who came forward with this idea, and administration for taking it seriously and investigating where we can, further spruce up the downtown in a needed link that needs to be done when the county is there. So I'm hoping council supports this because I think it's fantastic. So when we go to vote on this, Mr. Mayor, I'd like a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Vanderdolen.
Through you, I have a couple of questions and then my comment. Maybe administration could tell us, is this money going to be there next year as well? I'm sorry, maybe be specific. The county share of 170, would that be available next year? 137.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the county has yet to allocate funds towards this project. From my understanding, it's going to County Council on Wednesday. And the plans for this project are contingent on both the municipality and the upper tier having the funding.
But I thought this was presented to us as though there's extra money that was kicking around in some budget, and well, we've got to grab this now because suddenly it's there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the funding for this project is from unspent OCIF funding. Where that money comes from or the specifics with regards to that will have to come from our Director of Corporate Services.
Okay, and could you explain what the acronym means?
The Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund.
But the first question was, will it still be there next year?
Through the chair, yes. If not designated for this project, it would remain available for future budget years.
For us or just for the county for something?
For the town of Essex.
Okay, so I would say I'm going to have to vote against this because what this is this is the annual attempt that is made in this council to do an end run around our budget process. And, it's a knockdown, drag-out fight every year on where we're spending our scarce resources and which roads get fixed. And this is another attempt to get another road cookie in for one of the wards at the expense of the other wards. Now, we just spent $4 million on roads in Harrow, and I think if we were going to spend something extra this year outside of the budget, which this would be, then it should go at least to Ward 3, if not Ward 2. But as staff has warned us here, this is outside our budget, and if we spend this money and decide to do an extra road outside the budget, which we didn't agree to, That puts at risk the Essex streetscape, the 5th concession rehabilitation, the Bell Road rehab, Victoria Street, Victor Street, Viscount Parkway, the Maidstone Arthur Gosfield intersection, North Malden Road, and Bryan Avenue storm sewer. So, you know, maybe this looks like a minor victory for one ward, but it's going to put a whole bunch of our more important projects that we've already agreed to at risk. That is bad management. The money will still be there next year, but we should decide this. Like, this road needs to be done, there's no doubt. But this should be decided during the regular budget process next year. Thank you. And I'll vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor Van der Dolen. Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
I think just for some clarity, the reason that this came up is that the county is already doing 20 heading out of Harrow. They're doing, I believe, from Sunset out to, I won't be able to pick up which road, past the agricultural center. And so they're going to be there. That's one of the reasons we think we can get the county to partner with us, is because they're already there with their road crew. So it's not going to cost them to just come and do this section. They're already going to do up to there, and we need from there to there. So we're actually trying to piggyback on a project they're already doing and see if we can get some of their money to finish that road that we need done. So that's the reason it's important right now as compared to next year, because if they're not there anyway next year, they may not come back. So that's part of the reason for going after it now. Thank you.
And that's what I understood too, what Deputy Mayor Bjorkman was saying, was that there's substantial savings, and maybe we can ask Director Gerard if this is true, that there'd be substantial savings by doing it right now while that crew is there, rather than waiting till a future date to have it done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there is a benefit in completing it in conjunction with the county's work. The town would save on mobilization costs and also takes advantage of economies of scale through the county's procurement process.
And I believe, Director Gerard, you've already spoken with the county, their Director of Infrastructure, and that they believe the project to be a wise move from their end.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, the county's agreed to conduct the work on behalf of the town and share in the cost. Whether or not they agree with it will be decided at county council.
I think they're coming with a recommendation, though, that we move forward on this. So, thank you. Any further comments? Mr. Auger, did I get a motion on this?
Yes, there is a motion moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Verbeek, with a recorded vote requested.
Correct. Okay, so I'm going to pass it off to you because I don't see any further questions.
Mr. Mayor, again, on the motion moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Verbeek, that Capital Works and Asset Management Report 2022-04 be received, and that Council approve the expenditure of $100,000 for the Town of Essex share of the rehabilitation of County Road 20 from Walnut Street South to easterly limit of the County Road 20 connecting link from unspent Ontario Community Infrastructure Funds. Again, a recorded vote was requested by Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Van der Dolen, how do you vote?
Opposed.
Councillor Meady, how do you vote? Councillor Guerin, how do you vote? Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote? Councillor Bowman, how do you vote? Mayor Meloche, how do you vote?
Support.
And Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Support.
With a recorded vote of 7 in support, 1 opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Auger. Next report is 10.14. This is in regard to the 9th concession drain report for reconsideration. We're looking that drainage report 2022-05 be received, and that pursuant to section 57 of the Drainage Act, the report for the 9th concession drain be referred back for reconsideration, and that the Drainage Board meeting minutes dated April 21st, 2022 be received. Looking for someone to move that. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Meady. Are there any questions? All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Report 10-15. This is in regard to Building Report and Development Overview, April 2022. That Economic Development Report 2022-08 be received for information. Moved by Councillor Guerin and supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions or comments? Councillor Guerin.
Through you, yeah, it's a great report. Kudos to all. Fantastic growth. Some people say unbelievable, but I think it is believable. I mean, it's lots of construction going on. I mean, across all wards, 22.5 million total construction April. In Ward 1 alone, 17.5 million. So great job, everyone.
Any further comments? All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Next report is 10.16, Economic Development 2022-09. And this is in regard to Essex Tourism Events Fund applications for Q2. That Economic Development 2022-09 be received, and that Council approve the distribution of $1,000 of funding to the Heritage Coal Tester from the Essex Tourism Events Fund. So that's moved by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Mady. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the question then. All in favor of the motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 10.17, Development Services 2022-07, and this is in regard to Contract Building Inspector. That Development Services Report 2022-07 be received. That Council approve an as-needed Contract Building Inspector from May 16th, 2022 to December 31st of 2022, and that Bylaw 2151 being a bylaw to appoint Dan Boudreau as Building Inspector be read a first, second, and third time and passed this evening. Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Any comments? Councillor Vanderdolen.
Mr. Mayor, just stating the obvious, we have to do this to speed up the approval of projects. We've got so much work on our plates, so much coming. We need more approvals. It's great.
Thank you. And that's what I would have said as well. This is a good news story that we have to hire somebody because we just can't keep up with all the building that's going on. So thank you. All in favor of that motion? Carried again unanimously. Thank you. So now we're into County Council report, item number 12. Looking for a mover on the minutes of the regular County Council meeting held April 20th. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Bowman. Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Item 13, correspondence to be received. That all the correspondence listed in the agenda under item 13.1 be received. And we'll receive that. And if anybody wants to pull anything out, we can make a comment afterwards. So I'm looking for a motion to move all of that in 13.1. Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Are there any items that anybody would like to pull from those? Councillor Bondy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see that ELK Energy wrote to the town of Kingsville a progress update on action plan. And I have since asked ELK management and yourself and other board members, what is the progress update on an action plan in the town of Essex and in the Harrow service area? It seems like the town of Kingsville got more answers on ELK than we have had. So we have had ELK staff come to us and present their audited financial statements before you were chair here. And it was reiterated a few times by the former mayor, Larry Snively, that those meetings on their audited financials were just financial meetings. At the time, I was not able to ask any questions about ELK's asset management plan or upgrades in our service territory, mainly Essex and Harrow. So my question is, for anybody that can answer it, and I haven't been able to get an answer by email, my question is, what is the progress or update on any of these action plans in the Kingsville letter? You can, if you pull up the Kingsville letter, you will see that ELK Energy answered the town of Kingsville back, they successfully treated 65 aging poles, completed annual distribution asset inspections for assets within the Comber and Bell River area. As part of our preventative maintenance, we replaced 2 transformers on Applewood and Kingsville, completed third-party tree, and it goes on with details about what's being done in Kingsville service area. But I have yet, in my whole term of being on ELK and being on council, had an answer like this with our council. So I think we need to invite ELK Energy to our council and have them provide a similar answer to us, because no matter what, I'm doing cartwheels, I'm standing upside down, I'm putting it on my website, I'm emailing ELK, and the board members can't tell us, nobody in this room can tell us, but Kingsville got an answer. We're the owners, and we can't get an answer to what we own, what we're shareholders of. How many aging poles did they fix in our municipality, in my service area, and Essex service area? How many, what is the annual distribution asset inspections for Essex, Ward 1, for Harrow, Ward 4? How come we don't have those answers? So I'd like somebody to answer that, because I can't get an answer. Thank you.
I don't think you're going to get any answers here, but maybe you could make a motion that we request a similar response from ELK as what Kingsville received. Would you like to make that motion?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, if I can, as business arising out of receiving this correspondence from Kingsville, that the Town of Essex Council send a similar letter to the ELK management requesting that we have a follow-up to show us the commitment to the customers in the Essex and Harrow area on progress on an action plan.
Okay, supported by?
With a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor, please.
Supported by Councillor Verbeek. Any questions? Okay. Councillor Vanderdolen?
Your Honor, is the ELK board a governance board or is it an operations board?
I believe it's a governance board.
So that would mean that the ELK board has no power over individual transmissions or poles or... Okay, just like that on the record. Thank you.
Recorded vote. I'll pass it over to Mr. Auger.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have the precise wording of the proposed motion. I don't know if I can ask Councillor Bondi to repeat that for me.
Through you to our clerk, Mr. Auger, that the Town of Essex Council instruct our administration to draft a letter to ELK management that we would like an update on an action plan similar to the action plan report that the Town of Kingsville got. Is that clear enough? Any amendments?
Okay.
For asking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through to Councillor Bondi. So on the stated motion, as moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Verbeek, a recorded vote was requested by Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Mady, how do you vote? Support. Councillor Guerin, how do you vote? Support. Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote? Councillor Bowman, how do you vote? Mayor Meloche, how do you vote? And Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Support.
With a recorded vote of 7 in support and 1 opposed, the motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have 13.2, and that's correspondence to be considered for receipt and support. First one's 13.2.1, and this is the Essex Municipal Heritage Committee in regard to resignation of Mr. Tony Panicia. That a letter be sent to Mr. Tony Panicia, thanking him for his time spent on the Essex Municipal Heritage Committee. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman and supported by Councillor Guerin. Comment by Mr. Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
I'd like to thank Tony for his time on our committee. He was very knowledgeable, very enthusiastic. He chaired it for a while and did a great job for us. And unfortunately, as things are going now between Zooming and not Zooming in different meetings, there are some things that he just can't join us with. So we're hoping that, he can come back in the new term, that he was very instrumental on the team. So we really appreciate him being there.
Any further comments? All in favor of that motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 13.2.2 in regard to, this is a request for temporary relief from the town's animal care and county bylaw 1606 to permit 5 dogs, that the correspondence from Mr. Bruce Sovereign requesting exemption be received or received and supported. Councillor Vanderland? I'll move that. Looking for a supporter. Moved by Councillor or supported by Councillor Mady. Any further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Bjorkman?
Through you, it's an unusual request. Really, I don't know what to make of it. I'm just wondering if at 1175 County Road 23, is this a larger property? Has that been, anybody looked at that? I know I didn't. So I'm just wondering, if we're not sitting in the middle of a residential neighborhood and going to have 5 dogs in the backyard. I understand that, there's situations where families have to help each other out, and it's great. You need to take care of it, but we also have neighbors to think of, and frankly, our rules are there for a reason. So if there's extenuating circumstances there, that'd be great to just hear, so that people know we're just not arbitrarily allowing something to go against our regular bylaw.
And our deputy clerk, Ms. Shelley Brown, is going to respond.
Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. So Mr. Sovereign came in, and the situation is that his adult son has moved back in and brought with him his dogs. So they had their dogs. His son has his. 2 of them are senior, upwards between 10 and 11 years old. So he's just asking for the exemption until such time that one of them passes, or his son is able to perhaps purchase his own house. And it is on County Road 23 down by the Greenway, and it is I believe it's probably at minimum a 2 or 3 acre parcel.
Councillor Vanderdolen.
Mr. Mayor, just to add, I don't think there's another house within 500 feet surrounded by farm fields. This is just north of the greenhouse on the Arner, just south of the new bridge, the bridge that's being replaced right now. Thanks.
Councillor Bondi.
I appreciate this family coming forward and doing it the legal way, because in the last couple weeks I've been dealing with dog owners that have multiple dogs and potentially are lots of puppies and breeding, and it's causing havoc. Like Deputy Mayor Bjorkman said, the quality of life is a real factor, and dogs barking in this municipality. Please, if you're going to have a dog, be a good dog owner and don't let those dogs bark for hours and hours. You're not being a good neighborly citizen, and you're certainly not being a good dog mom or dog dad. So it's real, the struggle with dog barking, and I think we need to find a way to crack down on 4 or more dogs. So I appreciate the people that are coming forward legally, because we really need to address, we do have a bylaw for a reason, and it is 3 dogs, and it's community well-being. And I have been having a lot of calls about this, so it's time to address it. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Roger, I can't remember if we got a mover and a supporter on that.
And Councillor Mady.
Okay, thank you. So at this point in time, I'll just ask the question. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. Next correspondence is 13.2.3, Town of Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee. That the correspondence by the Town of Essex Accessibility Advisory Committee's Vice Chair Lisa Wallace asking Council to consider proclaiming National Accessibility Week in the Town of Essex be received and supported, and that Council proclaims the week of May 27th through the 4th, June the 4th, 2022 as National Accessibility Week in the Town of Essex by adopting the following resolution. And maybe what I'll do is I'll get a motion to see whether we're going to do this first. So a motion to move by Councillor Bondi and supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. All in favor of this motion? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. So we'll read that proclamation, and I'm going to pass the first part of it off to Mr. Auger, our clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas National Accessibility Week takes place every year starting on the last Sunday in May, it is a time when accessibility and inclusion is promoted across communities and workplaces, and a time to celebrate the contributions of Canadians with disabilities. It is also an opportunity to recognize the efforts of Canadians who are actively removing barriers and ensuring persons with disabilities have an equal chance to participate in all aspects of Canadian society. And whereas the increased social and economic inclusion of persons with disabilities has positive economic and social benefits for persons with disabilities, for business, the economy, and society in general. And whereas when persons with disabilities can access meaningful employment, resources, and services, Canada's economy grows. Businesses have the chance to welcome more customers, service satisfaction improves, and workplaces reflect Canada's diversity. And whereas by bringing Canadians together to recognize the valuable contributions of persons with disabilities, we are strengthening the collaborative effort needed to create a country that is fully accessible and inclusive.
Therefore, I, Mayor Richard Melange, do hereby designate the week of May 27th to June the 4th, 2022 as National Accessibility Week in the town of Essex. So now we're on to item 14, committee meeting minutes. And we do have 6 sets of minutes here. Looking to have a mover on these minutes. Moved by Councillor Bondi, supported by Councillor Guerin. Are there any questions on any of the minutes? Councillor Bondi?
I just want to make sure that the members of the public know that May 27th, as per the Accessibility Committee, we are raising the accessible flag here at Town Hall around noon. So if you want, come on out and join in that.
Thank you. There is one recommendation to council here that the Personnel Committee recommend to council the adoption of the disconnecting from work policy as presented in the HR report 2022-09 by resolution at this meeting. So, Councillor Bowman moves and supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Financial, we're looking at the 2022-2023 budget initiation memo, and I'm going to move over to Director Grusevich to give us a preview update.
Thank you, through the chair. So while it may seem like we just passed 2022, here we are with 2023. But I just kind of want to walk you through a very quick summary of some of the exciting new changes that we're implementing this year. So for the first time in quite a few years, we are going to be doing a budget reset. And what this exercise is really a very in-depth approach to the budget where we only provide senior leadership with certain historical information, and they essentially need to go through the budget line by line. So it's not done every year, but it is a good exercise. Our plan is to mirror it with the terms of council and their strategic goals. So we recently held at Fire Station 2 an internal training session where over 20 staff attended for this new budget approach and how to approach it. In June through the months of August, we plan on launching a public consultation period to seek public input into the 2023 budget. And one of the other enhancements that I believe is worth noting is the introduction of, rather than nightly budget deliberation meetings or budget walkthroughs, we do plan on hosting full day events. This is just because I think we can all agree that there's a lot of data thrown at you, and so to have everyone during the day might make it a little bit more smooth and efficient. That was it. Any questions? We'd be happy to answer them.
Council members. Don't see any, but that was, thank you for giving us the heads up on what's coming. Next item, sorry, I need a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Bowman, supported by Councillor Mady. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have new business, and I'm going to ask Council members, I'd like to move up Councillor Bondi's notice of motion in regard to the basketball nets from behind the water department in Harrow to be installed on the cement pad at the Harrow High School for youth in the area to play one-on-one and other games. So we're looking to move that up to new business. Moved by Councillor Bjorkman, supported by Councillor Mady. All in favor of moving that up? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So I'm going to, Councillor Verbeek.
Mayor, I too had a motion that's being read tonight, and I am hoping that we could also move that to new business as, and I can explain why if you would like.
Right now we're talking about this motion.
Okay.
So, I'm going to ask Councillor Bondi if is there any further that you want to talk about this?
I believe I may need a seconder.
We did. I thought Councillor.
Oh.
Move it up to new business.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Bondi is correct.
Okay. Okay. So you're moving this. We need a seconder then for the motion that I read. Basketball nets from behind the water department in Harrow be installed. Seconded by Councillor Bjorkman. So now we can have a conversation about it. Councillor Bondi, did you want to start?
Mayor, and I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Harrow people for bringing it up. I'm actually so happy that you brought it up. I could cry because it's we have a latchkey daycare that plays around there. It's a brand new cement pad. Well, it's not brand new, but it was brand new when the 7s and 8s went to the high school. So it's in fairly good condition. And, you know, we have the skate park right there, and we have the ball diamond right there, and the playground, and there's just a gap on, you know, things for the little bit older kids to do, right? The 10-year-olds, the 12-year-olds, the 35-year-olds. And so we just, you know, I was there and people were bouncing basketballs and they said they want a net. And then I started talking around and somebody told me that there was nets behind the water department. And I'm not sure if those nets, or we just want one, if one of those nets could be installed, because I even went, you know, on Facebook Live, and I even got donations. I have some money already, but then I have more pledge donations if we need to buy a net. So just looking to see if council would put it up. I know it's not part of our Parks and Rec master plan, but neither was buying the high school. And if we have to, you know, sell the high school and the net is gone, then the net is gone. But we could at least get one season out of it for a net that's sitting at the water department. So just looking for council support. It's pretty plain and simple, but it would really excite the Harrow community to have we're calling it Hoops in Harrow this summer.
Bonnie, I think I'll go to Director Morrisou to see if he can add anything to this. Is there any complications? Is this something that's doable?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through the conversation I had with Councillor Bondi was that administration did not recommend doing it because of the unknown facts about what's going on with the high school property. We are currently undergoing the assessment, so we wanted to see, especially being donated products. What we don't want to see happen is we get into a position where we have all these donations from the public, and then we have to rescind that and take them down later on, where it was their hard-earned money, and we don't want to put them in that position where we take it down later on. So that was the number one recommendation. As well, again, it's not part of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, so we wanted that to go to council for you to decide what is going to happen with that recommendation. In saying that, we do have a couple basketball nets at the water department, which were removed from the Colchester area. So with that, they are cut down to be 6-foot posts right now. So we would have to get extensions put on those to be fully utilizable for the 10-foot requirement for basketball nets. As well, the unfortunate other red tape is that we would have to get locates to be able to drill the holes and dig it into the ground. We did submit those last week as soon as this was brought up, knowing that could be a potential situation. So in saying that, locates are still taking 2 to 3 months to receive those, which is the unfortunate part. So hoping if this does go through that gets accelerated a little bit quicker, but unfortunately we are hindered by that.
guess, would be, do we have the money in our budget that we could spend in doing this as a town expense?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the rest of council, is no money budgeted for this project. It was new, so that was one of the other recommendations, is because it was unbudgeted, was that we would ask that it was pushed to 2023 capital budget.
Go to Director Grusevich and ask if there's anything, any potential funding that we could get from town monies.
Through the chair, just before we talk about the potential funding, I just would maybe defer it to Rob, because insurance needs on the property right now may change as well, right? Right now, it's a basic use for insurance purposes, so that would be another expenditure that would be required.
Not much to add, but the insurance company is, yes, we, due to the timelines when we purchased, a basic amount of insurance coverage was put into place, but they are looking at the history of the property and other information that was brought forward. And so there likely will be an adjusted premium coming in the near future. We don't know definitively yet what that extra premium or add-on to the or rider to the policy will be. But we're hoping to find that soon.
So there are some unanswered questions, I guess, at this point in time. And again, the locates are maybe the hold up on trying to get this done immediately. Okay. So we would appreciate, Mr. Director Morrisou, if you could keep us up to date. This is something that all council thought would be a good project. Just want to remind councilors too, though, I know Councillor Bondi's passion for this project. She wanted to get this done immediately, and she was asking directors and managers to do this without bringing it to council. So going forward, we got to make sure that we follow the rules. If you have some project that you want to do, it has to be passed by council. It can't be just one councillor directing, or mayor or deputy mayor or anybody directing that a project get done before it comes to council. Mr. Sweet, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Maybe I can put a suggestion out that if council supports this in principle, to give us that direction so we continue to move forward in terms of line locates. We can look at budgeting options, get some answers. So, and probably bring this back, hopefully the June 6th or soon after for approval. But if we can in principle keep moving forward, so it doesn't delay and have to start, say, June 6th. Council's good with that. I'd also look at, we would come back with a funding model. Also, it's great to get donations from the community. If it's going to be a town feature, I think the town should look up and where we can fund this. So that's something we can come back with council as well.
I think this is important. It's we're looking at youth that are restless, that are youth that are doing other things, and maybe if we can keep them. I know basketball kept me busy. That was that's complete to keep us off the streets, but we did a lot better. I think it's important that we give them those opportunities. And I like the idea of maybe we keep one of those nets low and the other one high, so the 12-year-olds have a net to shoot at, and the 18 to 61-year-olds have a net to shoot at.
Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the same thing. I used to like to adjust them so I could slam dunk it myself, but my vertical isn't like it used to be anyways. But okay, so I think what I'm hearing here is, I don't know if the residents are going to believe these answers we're giving them about why we can't put up a basketball hoop, but is there any piece of property that we do own right now that we can affix a backboard and a net to, even against a wall, anywhere that's in close proximity to where Councillor Bondi is suggesting, just temporary even, until we can get these locates and get this money and everything, if we can help them out in any way. I know we can't do anything that's a temporary type of a net where there's going to be liability involved if it falls down and stuff, but maybe just something affixed to a wall.
CAO Sweet or Director Morrisou? Director Morrisou.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Guerin. So we could certainly do that. Again, that would be more of a budgetary item, because the problem would be the nets that we have right now are affixed to a post. So I'm not sure if those nets can be removed or if they're solid bolted on there. So that would be the recommendation, would be utilizing the existing posts for that reason. But ultimately, it's council's appetite. If they want to go through with a purchase of a new backboard, then we'd be looking at different budgetary options. But one thing I didn't mention earlier in terms of budgets, I can't speak on behalf of the insurance, but we're projecting approximately $1,000 to be able to get the inserts and cut the posts to length to be able to meet that 10-foot requirement. So it's not too expensive, but if we added another backboard on top of it, then we could be looking at additional costs, of course.
Councilor Verbeek.
Mr. Mayor, so I understand our CAO is recommending that we leave it in their hands for a couple of weeks and they'll come back to us with this? Is that where we're going to go?
Yes, to keep the process moving. We don't want to slow it down. And unfortunately, we just can't do a quick fix. Councilor Guerin mentioned it is a risk and liability. Give an example of soccer nets. We have to make sure they're always pinned and all that because unfortunately, injuries occur and the town gets sued. So I can let you know through Director Morissette, this is a priority. Our direction was to come here to get direction from council as a whole. And if we can get that in principle, we'll not wait for 3 weeks. We'll start tomorrow, keep the process moving.
Any further, Councilor Bondi?
Really like that idea of keeping it in principle. I mean, it was bumped up on the agenda anyway, so I'm happy that we're having this discussion. Barker Builds has offered to do any steel fabrication for us in the town, so that could be at no cost. And I just want to point out that the ball diamonds, the women's ball diamond, that is on school board. It was on school board property, so we already have levels of liability around this area. People are already playing on these equipment. We're going to have liability at the Harrow High School property until if people are hopping on the roof, people are hopping back. If we want zero liability with the high school, we sell it right now, or we put a fence up. Don't get any ideas. We put a 12-foot fence up around it and say nobody use it, because I'll tell you right now, the Latchkey Group is using it. The ball diamonds, those are women's ball diamonds that are on our property. People are using it. The skate park, I can go there and cut my finger right now. We are in the job of recreation. We're going to have liability. So thank you, Councillor Guerin, for pointing out that the residents aren't going to buy these excuses. Because I have $1,000, I can write a check right now for $1,000 and leave it with you, Mr. Sweet. So yeah, let's keep it going forward in principle, and hopefully we can play some hoops in Harrow at some point. I also know Locate guys, so I can give them a call too and move that up.
Any other comments? Okay, so Mr. Auger, are you looking to have, just trying to think now, did we have a motion?
We did, Mr. Mayor, moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Bjorkman. Based on the discussion, it sounds as though the amended motion would be for council to grant in principle the installation of those noted basketball nets as stated in the motion, subject to completion of locates and budget options.
Okay. So all in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Verbeek, you were asking if your notice of motion could be moved up. I'm going to pass on that because I have not had any chance to view. Councillor Bondi actually spoke to me about this one and asked me to have this moved up. And I felt it was something that needed to be moved up. I have no idea of what your notice of motion is at this point in time. Okay, thank you. So now notices of motion, 17.1. The first one is Councillor Bondi that's going to be discussed this evening. Councillor Bondi is asking, she's moving, that council use either grant money or funds from the council contingency fund to construct or install an accessible bathroom at the Kinsman Fieldhouse in Ward 1, and I'm looking for a seconder on this. Looking for seconded by Councillor Bjorkman, or Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, and looking for some discussion. Director Grusevich.
Amendment on the potential wording, rather than disclosing it as council contingency fund, using council's contingency capital project.
you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not sure if council had a chance to see the letter from the Accessibility Committee. I think it was sent out to council after last week's meeting. The Accessibility Committee had a meeting last Wednesday, and we had a very healthy discussion about this project. The chair sent a letter to council and administration in support. And it's one of those items that has come up through the year. And, I understand it's not in a budget period right now, but there is a need. Nobody sitting in this room right now has to crawl to the bathroom, and nobody using this facility, I would hope, after we pass this shortly, would have to crawl to the bathroom. So the Accessibility Committee, just so council knows, also took it a step further, and we are going to look at a complete audit of all of our buildings, being, in some, like the Carnegie Eckers, that may never be fully accessible, but, it is 2022, and we do know that we rent out buildings to private individuals and private companies. That doesn't mean we can't work towards a fully accessible Essex, where everybody with any different ability can use our facilities. So this is I would say, as Councillor Baker before used to say, a low-hanging fruit one, an easy win, and it's just the right thing to do. Sometimes there comes up, we have financial constraints, but then it comes down to sometimes there's just a right thing to do, and I believe moving forward with this tonight is the right thing to do. So I will ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Clerk. Thank you.
Further discussion or comments? Councillor Bowman?
This is a unique building, and there was discussions a few years ago about tearing it down because of its, I guess, antiquated construction. Not only the washrooms, but just the building itself. The only reason it was saved because they needed the building for the electrical for the baseball diamond, so they had to maintain something there, and that's why it still exists. The question is really, should we be renting it out? And that's, I think, the real issue. I'm sure the money we spent it over the last 10 years doesn't begin to pay what we've gotten back in rent. Nowhere near it. It's a building that is we shouldn't be using, and I'm sure as soon as the ball diamonds get relocated, that building will be gone. It's unfortunate it comes at this time because there's a user that needs space, and they're in there, and I agree. The facility is not designed, nor is it suitable for any type of handicap accessibility. It just isn't. It was never designed that way. It was built by a club, not as a municipal building. So it has some real issues. And I guess the real question comes, where do you draw the line and say, no, this building is no longer useful, and close it? And I'm not sure at this time that's the appropriate time. I know the user of this building really needs it, and if we did kick them out, that's a huge burden on them. But on the same token, I'm not sure that that's the town's responsibility to supply space for other entities in the community that are not, we are responsible for supplying services for our town and not rental spaces for the general businesses in the area. And it is a difficult situation, and I've torn both ways on this item since it first came forward, well, before, when we looked at it, do we keep it open or not? So it's a soul-searching time. Do we keep spending more taxpayers on a unit that probably shouldn't be there, or do we keep going in the direction we are? So difficult times.
Councillor Guerin.
Yeah, so it does serve a purpose. It does have the electrical for the diamonds that we've agreed on are going to have to stay there for a while. So the tearing it down part, I'm not sure why that would be discussed because it can't go down. It's serving a purpose right now. She's put some time into it. She's put money into it on the inside. How long, I'd like to ask, how long is the lease that she has? Is it just year to year, the lease?
Mr. Mayor, I'll have to look that up. I can pull that up in a couple minutes.
Looking for that, because that's something we'll have to consider too, but, and regarding the money that we put into it annually, does the rent that we're getting in, does it exceed the maintenance and taxes that we pay on the building? Anyone can answer that?
Mr. Mayor, it would not. This year, for example, we did pass in the capital budget to have the roof replaced because there are small areas of leaks and the roof was in need of replacement. So that's a significant cost for that building, which would take many years for us to recoup that cost.
Lastly, with respect to the council contingency funding, what do we have left in 2022? And did we even use all of it in 2021? Or is this, do we often use that fund, or is there usually money left over?
Through the chair, it depends. Normally it is used, a good portion of it, depending on the year and what comes up. 2021's was rolled into 2022's. So whatever wasn't used, approximately $15,000. This year there's the full $50,000 available.
Comments? Sorry, Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
For you. If I can ask Director Morissette again, what was the estimate on having that work done?
Mr. Mayor, it was approximately $15,000 about a month and a half ago, which there was a little bit of a contingency put in that as well, based on prices significantly skyrocketing and being unstable. So we did try and leave a little bit of cushion room in there for that purpose. As a secondary point to answer Councillor Guérin's question, it expires currently in July 2023.
Further to that, so I think Councillor Bowman's brought up a good point. Is we have to decide, you know, what are we doing in the rental business? Buildings that we have that are aging, are they worth putting the money into? I just have to say, if we're running it as a business, and any business out there right now that runs has to be handicap accessible. You don't have a choice. That's what you do. You make sure that that's there. And you're built to whatever the handicap accessible's specs were when you built your building. But for us, if we're going to invite the public in and we're going to rent it out for profit, which we're doing, then we should provide what business has to provide. It should just be a matter of, that's our policy. And to expect that you're going to rent out to groups who are, well, just not going to need that there won't be anybody who needs some accessibility issues, I don't think is realistic. So I'm in favor of doing this. This is a group that's in there that we've rented to. We know that they service a population that needs our help and that have accessibility issues. So I think we need to do this. And as a matter of policy, we should be doing it. That's how we should look. I'm not looking at one individual. I'm not looking at one particular business. And if we're in the business of renting, then we need to make a policy, have a look at our inventory, and make sure that we are providing what people should be able to get. So I'll support this for that reason, that I just believe it is the right thing to do, and we need to take care of those residents. Thank you.
Any further comments, Councillor Guérin?
So to Deputy Mayor Bjorkman's point, I agree with all that. But just to clarify, I mean, when the town was approached for the building, it was as is. It wasn't like we were, and I think in hindsight, I mean, it probably wasn't even thought of at the time about the handicap accessibility. So no wrongs here, and I agree with you.
Councillor Bondi?
And this is the perfect example why marginalized special groups are fearful to come forward. Because when they come forward, the solution is, rather than fixing it, to make going to the bathroom human. The answer is, let's kick them out. I challenge anybody watching this to get in touch with this organization, to go through this building and to see the value that this building brings to the members that go there. People don't advocate for themselves. Migrant workers won't advocate for themselves about their living conditions because they're afraid. This is the same thing here. There's a reason they're not front and center, and there's the reason why the Pitbull counselor is. And we should be ashamed that this isn't a slam dunk. We talk about making something handicap. It's just like you and I walking to the bathroom. Imagine crawling on the floor to go to the bathroom in a town-owned facility. Imagine all of the handicaps that these people have in everyday life. Every single thing they do is hard. So they come here, and it is a glorious building with a beautiful program, an amazing, astounding program that everybody in this room should take time to go and see. And everybody in this room should vote in favor for these individuals that have a heck of a lot more challenging life than you, Councillor Bowman. I would ask for a recorded vote, please.
Bowman?
I agree that that organization is a fantastic one and does a tremendous amount of work. But that building was never even designed for that type of use. And now we're saying that we're supposed to change our building to accommodate a use that it isn't designed for and never was designed for. And it's our issue that we allow those things to happen as we move forward. And we are just compounding it because by putting that in, we still haven't done the issues with the doors and all the other units in the place. And that's the issue we have when we make modification to old buildings that should be not used for what we want them to be used for, because they're not built for that use. And we always run into these type of issues where the building does not fit the use that's coming forward. And we've had this time issue and issue for years and years as we keep working on our old buildings, trying to fix them up till they'll meet the new regulations. Well, the regulations keep changing. And that's why in so many cases, it's better to have a new unit put up that meets the needs of the regulations of the day. And you've got new buildings with new technology that operates at much more efficiencies. We've talked today that the money we get back from this facility doesn't even begin to pay what the cost of operating that over the years. Some years we may get enough back to make the regular maintenance on it, but for just here tonight that the roof is being replaced. Well, if we've replaced the roof, obviously we're looking at it for a few more years, and the lights are going to be there for a few more years. And again, I fully intended to support the motion tonight to do the washrooms, but what I wanted to point out, and I've been pointing out, is that you can't keep renting out old facilities and expecting them to meet today's needs as we're moving forward. And we've made that mistake before, and we get into these type of situations where you're spending extra money all the time to accommodate something that it wasn't designed for. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Or Councillor Bowman. Councillor Vanderdoen.
Mayor, through you, I agree with everything Councillor Bowman says. My father was a double amputee due to a rare and horrible disease, and I spent years pushing him around in a wheelchair, but he taught me not to waste money on bad infrastructure or a car you were going to get rid of. You didn't put new tires in. It's just, this isn't wise use of money. And if it was 200 grand, I'd be voting against it. But for 15,000, I'll go along with it. Thanks.
I think we've had enough discussion on this. I'm going to ask for the vote. We'll go to Mr. Roger so he can take the recorded vote.
Mayor. On the motion as moved by Councillor Bondi, seconded by Councillor Bjorkman, and with friendly amendment that council use funds from capital project council contingency to construct, install an accessible bathroom at the Kinsman Fieldhouse in Ward 1. Again, a recorded vote was requested by Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, how do you vote? Support. Councillor Vanderdolen, how do you vote? Councillor Mady, how do you vote? Support. Councillor Guerin, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Verbeek, how do you vote?
Support.
Councillor Bowman, how do you vote?
Support.
Mayor Malash, how do you vote? Support. Deputy Mayor Bjorkman, how do you vote?
Support.
The recorded vote of 8 in support, none opposed, the motion carries.
Next item is 17.1.2, notice of motion again from Councillor Bondi. So she's moving, and I'm looking for a supporter that council direct administration to install a no dumping sign on Dunn Road between 560 Dunn Road and 650 Dunn Road on the east side by the field culvert due to years and years of repeat dumping at this location. Looking for a supporter. Supported by Councillor Mady. Councillor Bond, do you want to speak on it?
I'm up for other solutions. I was contacted by a gentleman down there. I believe Councillor Vanderdolen in the past has. The gentleman has said that previously Mayor Snively helped him pick up buckets of nails, and Councillor Rogers. So this has been a outstanding issue, a long-standing issue rather, for a number of years. I don't know, Mr. Gerard, if you've seen them where they are. It is hard to find, but they're on a culvert, and it's like somebody has a bonfire and they burn nails and nails and nails in the wood, and then they dump them on the side of the road in the same spot year after year after year. So I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to find solutions, and I hope that we'll find one here.
Questions or comments? Councillor Vanderdolen and then Deputy Mayor Bjorkman.
Your Honor, through you, yeah, I went out to this site once. It's one guy, I'm sure it's a guy, who burns pallets in his backyard, and pallets are full of nails. But he hasn't dumped this year. The nails eventually do rust. During the town cleanup on the weekend, my wife and I, we were on one side of Dunn Road, and a couple of town volunteers were on the other side. We walked, I think, 2 or 3 kilometers up towards Gore, and I think we filled about 6 garbage bags with litter. And I'm telling you this because a sign won't do anything. So we got to the end and we threw our stuff in the parks truck and we started walking back. We found fresh garbage that had been thrown behind us. People drove by us, watching us pick garbage out of the ditch, and they threw more garbage behind us. So if you think a nitwit like that is going to believe a sign that says no dumping, then we're just going to be wasting $600 on this sign or whatever it is. What we should be doing is putting up, besides, no dumping is illegal everywhere. You can't put just a no dumping sign there. Although we could put a sign there that says report dumping with a phone number. Because what we need is a conviction. We need somebody to rat one of these guys out and give them a good ticket. But a no dumping sign is useless. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think, I'm glad Councillor Bondi brought this issue forward, because this is an issue throughout our municipality. And I've been called by a couple other residents at different times that have asked for a particular no dumping sign at a certain spot. But I mean, we can drive our roads, and all of us can find spots where there's a continuous, so this is an education issue. This is something we need to find a way to get the message out. Perhaps there's something that we can do as a town to just get some education, some awareness to make people aware. And I like the councillor's idea. If you see somebody dumping, call us at. There's always that fear that somebody is going to catch them. So if we can heighten that a little bit, that people are watching and that we are aware, that we're not supposed to be dumping. So I would go more with a broader program, because I think we all have this issue in our areas. It doesn't matter if it's urban or rural. People are chucking stuff out of the window all over the place. So I like the idea, I like the conversation. I think a particular sign there, I won't support that, but I would support some kind of conversation, maybe something back from administration as to how we can get that word out a little more, what dumping is, how much it can cost you if you're caught, that sort of thing, and maybe we can heighten awareness.
Any further comments? Councillor Mady?
I drove out there to take a look at what's being dumped, and I would agree that it's probably just some guy that's burning pallets in his backyard, and I think he might have taken up fishing too, because there's some fish guts out there. But yeah, we would definitely need to have a sign that in my opinion, exactly, report, call this number, get the conviction. At the very least, if we put a sign up there that said that, this guy knows that people are watching now, and maybe it will stop him. So I would support putting some form of a sign. What the wording on the sign is, maybe we could agree on that. If there's a number that we'd like to add on to it, let's add on to it. But I think something needs to be done to stop this guy.
Mr. Sweet, our CAO.
Mr. Mayor, I'd be hesitant, as Councillor Vanderdolen mentioned, put signage up, because it is a problem, as Deputy Mayor stated, throughout our entire municipality. So one sign I don't think's help. I think it's something that administration can talk about and come back with a plan. It's going to be, I think, kind of a social media campaign like we've done with idling, grass clippings, different projects. And I think this can fall into one of those things where we do regular promotions on it. But it gives us an opportunity. I can meet with our manager of strategic communications, and if council's okay with that, we can come back with a suggested plan on how to address this through the social media means.
Thank you, CAO Sweet. I know we've got a motion here to put the sign up. Councillor Bondy?
I just, can we make a friendly amendment to the motion that council direct administration to come back with a social media campaign on no dumping or no littering in general? Stop being a jerk.
And I think Deputy Mayor, are you the seconder? Or Councillor Mady? Councillor Mady, you're good with that? Okay. And I too agree that this would be a good direction to go, and this will help across the community. Because there's lots of spots in Ward 2, correct, Councillor Verbeek? There's lots of spots in Ward 2 where this is happening too. So, okay, with that said, all in favor of the motion? It's carried. Thank you. Next item, notice of motion by Councillor Bondy. So she's moving that Essex Council ask County Council to review its policies regarding the appointment of the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority Board and include one representative from the town of Essex to sit on the board due to the town of Essex being the host municipality. So Councillor Bondy moves. Is there anybody that wants to second? Councillor Verbeek. Councillor Bondy, did you want to speak on it first?
I have a list of things that I want to discuss with council, and we don't ever have enough roundtables because I could roundtable every Monday, but I don't even know if council feels that this is worthy, but I certainly do. During the last 3-4 years, whenever something solid waste authority comes up, I'm like, whoa, who's our Essex rep? And I'm like, oh, we don't have one. So, and I know that we really can't tell the county how to form their striking committee, but I think that this is a worthy discussion, that the town of Essex is the host municipality and we want somebody at the table. That's all.
And thank you, Councillor Bondy, for bringing this forward. Of course, I'm going to support it. I've been talking about this for a few years now. I've discussed this with our past CAO, Nepsi. I just had a conversation like 3 or 4 weeks ago with a mayor in a neighboring community. It really doesn't make sense that we host this regional landfill and we don't have a seat at the table. We should just automatically have a chair as with a rep on the solid waste authority.
And Mr. Sweet is going to have a comment.
Your Worship, just so all of council, if they're not aware, so with the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, What the county does is they ask all the county members, mayors and deputy mayors, what's their first three choices? And based on that is how they select their committees. So moving forward, I'd recommend potentially, if our council feel that someone should be on board, that they select always their mayor, deputy mayor, should put that as their first choice. We also do have a landfill liaison committee, which consists of 8 members, and 2 of those members are from our municipal council, which is Councillor Verbeek and currently our Mayor Meloche. So we do sit on that. But in terms of this Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority board, right now, Councillor Bonnie's correct. We don't have a seat automatically, but it's based on what their choices are.
I think this time it was a little bit weird. Mayor Snively at the time in 2018 put his name down to be on the Board of Health and the Essex County, the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, and they only chose him for one committee. So was that sometimes you get chosen for 2 committees, sometimes you get chosen for 3 committees. It just happened the way it worked out. He got his first choice, and he didn't think of anything. If he thought he wasn't going to get chosen, the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority, he would have put that as first. So it just ended up that that's the way it worked out. So we will have to do a better job, I believe, at County Council. The County Council reps will have to make sure that it's understood when that we want an Essex rep on that board. So I do agree. Councillor Bondi or Councillor Bowman.
Thank you, and through your honor, just to point out too that half that committee is from the city of Windsor, and the deciding vote goes back and forth each year or each election. So interesting board. I was on it for a short period of time, but it's a strange board. Thank you.
So exactly what Councillor Bowman just stated is the reason why I've felt for a long time it's really important that we're a little more, forceful or aggressive in ensuring that we actually get one of those county seats, because every 2 years there's 4 seats from the county, 5 from the city, and then they swap. So especially on the times where we have the county has less representation, it would be really good to always have someone at that table from this municipality that hosts the landfill. And I do appreciate our CAO suite mentioning that we do have that landfill liaison committee, and I'm sure the mayor will back me up on this. It's an important committee, but we really have no teeth. The Solid Waste Authority is where we need to have someone at the table at all times.
I just want to mention too that in most instances, if not all instances, County Council has the back of Essex. They truly do when they're sitting there. And I think Councillor Verbeek can attest to that in some of the issues that have come up over the years. When we had no Toronto garbage, that we didn't want any Toronto garbage, every councillor, we had a notice of motion, or we had a motion put on the table, and we have recorded votes, and every councillor from the county would vote in favor of making sure that no Toronto garbage goes there. They could see Essex's position on this, and it's continuous like that. But there are years, and so in all honesty, regardless of whether there's anybody from the town of Essex on that committee, we still get very good support from other county councillors in regard to the issues that are related to the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority. Councillor Bondi?
Maybe we can bring this motion back in-house, saying that after the next election, through our committee appointments, we have one of our mayors or our mayor or deputy mayor select the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority as their first pick. We can bring it in-house then, and if that's okay, if we can just put that maybe in our committee procedure bylaw, because until CAO Sweet said that tonight, I honestly didn't know how the county council committees were selected until you said that, Mr. Meloche, Mayor Meloche. I didn't know, so it was good. It was a good, healthy conversation, and I hope in the next term of county council we will have a voice there.
So are you pulling your notice of motion then?
Well, I think it's more of an amendment to suggest that in our procedure bylaw for our striking committee after the next election, that the mayor or the deputy mayor put number 1 for the Essex Windsor Solid Waste Authority to ensure that the town of Essex has a rep on that board. Because even like with the organics, right? I was talking to Kingsville Council, and with their organics, that should be a county tax. It really should. We're going to get whopped with a 3% tax increase for something the county's making us do. So things like that, where we could have a stronger voice if we had somebody there.
Thank you. Mr. Auger, you have the motion?
Mr. Mayor, just wanted to ensure Councillor Verbeek as the seconder was okay with that revised. Okay.
Question then, all in favor of that motion? Carried. Thank you. Next, we have notices of motion that are going to be presented tonight, but won't be discussed until June the 6th. And we have one from, and I'm going to pass this off to Mr. Auger because there's some additionals in here as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As noted, 17.2.1 was dealt with as new business. Moving on to 17.2.2 is a notice of motion for presentment only from Councillor Guerin, that Council direct administration to look into a means of better protecting our public parks and town-owned properties from graffiti and other vandalism through design strategies that minimize opportunity. And then second notice of motion as added during adoption agenda, during the adoption of the published agenda this evening, and added to the agenda 17.2.3 is a notice of motion from Councillor Bondi that Council direct administration to amend the parking bylaw to ensure the OPP can enforce the parking regulations. And then thirdly, also added to the published agenda during adoption this evening is a notice of motion, again for presentment only, from Councillor Verbeek, that Council send a letter to the school boards requesting the OPP to be invited, allowed to start running the Values Influence Peers Program, VIP program, in our grade schools. And again, those are coming back to the June 6th regular council meeting.
May I call just point of order? And now that Chair Malash, you've heard Councillor Verbeek's motion, it's very timely to reinstate the police in the school. If you could rule again on that, please, because it is timely because of what happened. Mm-hmm. And it meets the new business, minor and urgent.
Well, what I can do on a point of order is I won't make the decision, but I'll let council make the decision. So Councillor Bondi's moving that. Are you seconding that, Councillor Verbeek? Okay. I'll let council make the decision whether we want to bring that up for tonight for new business. So all in favor of moving that up to tonight? So we got 5 in favor, 6. Okay. We will move that up then for tonight under new business for discussion right now. So Councillor Verbeek.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The reason I did want to move it up to new business is because I kind of felt like it was urgent in light of the statement that you made at the beginning of this meeting. It just gives us as council the opportunity to just take one small step towards, addressing the increased vandalism we're experiencing and the bullying incidents that we've been having, and of course the Friday night incident. Now, this discussion is already, like we brought it up at the police service board meeting, and we spoke to Inspector Miller about it. And one of the boards is indeed allowing the VIP program back on. But the public board is just now in discussions about whether or not they're going to bring back all these programs that were canceled due to COVID. So I'm hoping that if council just sent forward the letter that we support bringing these back, that we're asking our school board to invite the OPP back in with this important program. I don't know. I, for one, find that we've been experiencing all these increases in bullying and vandalism and we haven't been running this VIP program. I'm not saying it's going to be the end all be all and the answer, but it's us showing one small step that we're trying to pulling out all stops to address the issues. And the OPP are ready to get back into the schools with this valuable program.
Councillor Bjorkman or Deputy Mayor Bjorkman did. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm going to ask the question then. Councillor Bowman, did you want to speak?
This will be circulated to the rest of the municipalities in Essex County, I would hope. Okay. Okay. Friendly amendment, if you would. Thank you.
So next item, and I'm going to remind everybody that this reports and announcements from council members. There's no discussion. There's no motions that come out of this. This is just announcements from councillors of what's going on. If they've got some business that they did, or if they've got a fundraiser that they got coming up or something like that. So I'll start at the far end with Councillor Vanderdolen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have good news to announce. The asparagus is back on the Ridge Road. I love making soup, and I've been out there 3 times, and it was closed. And I finally ran into the farmer, Mr. Keith Wright, and he was apologizing for the harsh winter and the long spring, and it was up. He said it's been up 7 to 10 days late. But anyway, it's open. The stuff is fantastic. If you've never had it, it's worth the trip. And this meeting has gone on so long that I'm worried my wife has eaten it all. But anyway.
So I've decided to do a little kids clothing swap on my driveway, June 5th, 10 to 4. And half of my garage is full of kids' clothes right now. But we're going to just, kids grow out of clothes so fast that, sometimes they're not ruined. And times are tough, right? So if you're a parent and you want to donate clothes, please drop them off on my porch, 255 Wellington Street. And please come out on June 5th from 10 to 4 and pick up some new clothes. So I'm really looking forward to it. It should be a good day. Thank you.
Mayor Bjorkman? All good? I'll go over to Jason, Councillor Mady, Jason Mady. Councillor Guerin, Councillor Verbeek, Councillor Bowman.
Comment. Many of us were disappointed when our SX-73s bit the dust here a couple of weeks ago. And over the weekend, the team that defeated our team, the Lakeshore Canadians, won the provincial championship this past weekend. So congratulations to them, and I'm sure it's because our mayor wore their shirt the one day. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bowman, for giving me that credit. I was more sad that the 73s lost than anybody, because it cost me a little bit of I had to give a bottle of wine from every winery in the county, or from the town of Essex in the county. Well, we've got more than half the wineries in the town of Essex County. So I just want to mention real quick, keep June the 12th open. That's the McGregor Music Festival in the village of McGregor at Coan Park. It's a huge fundraiser for our regional Windsor Essex Regional Cancer Center. Last year they raised about $75,000 for the Regional Cancer Center on that one-day event. So we're hoping that a lot of people can get out there. They usually have 700 or 800 people attend the event. So 9 bands that play. I will remind you again on June the 6th, because it's June the 12th is the event. So if you can mark that in your calendar, it runs all day from 11 in the morning till 9 at night. Different band plays every hour, and everything's donated. There's nothing that costs. Everything's donated. A lot of good people involved. So thank you. And that's it. With that said, we're going to go on to bylaws, and I'm going to pass it over to our clerk and manager of legislative services, Mr. Auger.
Under bylaws for third and final reading, we have bylaw 2152 to confirm the proceedings of the May 2nd, 2022 regular meeting of council.
Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Councillor Bowman. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Also for third reading this evening is bylaw 2025, being a bylaw to license and regulate short-term rental units in the town of Essex. And this bylaw for third reading has a suggested fee of $700, and that is further to the feedback and suggestion that were received in connection with the after-hours call center for STRs. And that's in front of council for third reading.
Moved by Councillor Vanderdolen, supported by Councillor Mady. Councillor Bondi.
been a really long night, and I do have some feedback from residents, and I don't know if council has the appetite to go through this feedback at this late of night. Like, people are still concerned about, the septic systems. People are also still concerned about the 100-meter. I know that it's paused right now, but people are still concerned about that. And the signs, like a new thing that came to light today was, do short-term rentals fall within our sign bylaw? So I don't know if we're going to have discussion, pick away at some of these, or table it until our next meeting. We have the stopgap in place now. I know we want to pass this tonight, but we do have the stopgap in place. So I don't know if we're going to spend a half an hour on this, or I'll just leave that to council.
I think I said last week, this is not the last word. This is going to be a work in progress. We should pass it tonight. If we have to fix it or adjust it in future, we can. Let's get this done now. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? I believe I have a motion to accept this the way it is. I'll ask the question then. All in favor of that motion? That's carried. Thank you. Next item is, Mr. Ogier, I'll pass it back to you. It's another bylaw.
For two readings this evening is Bylaw 2158, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this May 16th regular council meeting.
Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Councillor Mady. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And our next meeting is June the 6th. We have a special meeting at 4:30 on June the 6th. That's in preparation of our new official plan. Director Chadwick and probably Manager Rita Jabora will guide us through that. And then we have a regular meeting that night as well, 6 till 9. With that said, I'll ask for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Guerin, supported by Deputy Mayor Bjorkman. All in favor? That's carried.